probably broadcasting. You just want to see how you behave.
There we go. Good evening, everyone. It's Tuesday, January 28th. This is the Advisory Committee meeting, and it's 7 p.m. So today we are continuing on talking to different committees and departments about their budgets. And we will begin tonight with Susan Latham, who is our Animal Control Officer. Susan.
Terry, as we get started here, can we limit the amount of time we spend with the department introductions? Because some of those were quite prolonged last time.
We will do our best.
Okay, if we could limit them to
a minute
would be fine.
This is what you're on. See, what he's referring to is because last time, which wasn't last week, but the week before last, I asked people to just describe a little bit what their department does. And if you would just spend a minute or so, minute and a half, to what work that you do as Animal Control Officer, just to give us an overview of what the department is.
If you can use the word animal in the sentence, we do it.
Okay.
That was very good, Terry. Wow. You cut that way down from last time.
Well, so then I'm going to just say, since that's what you're going to say. I watched you last year, which was wonderful. The discarded animals, we talked about discarded animals being up. And the terminology I have my 2 dogs, and I have many dogs that broke my heart. Are discarded animals still on the increase?
Oh, yeah.
And so...
How am I doing?
Good.
Excellent.
But okay, let me see if I can ask an open-ended question.
Good luck.
Good luck. You're a challenge. Huh? So...
Describe some discarded.
Thank you for that. So discarded animals are?
Yes.
No, just take a second and tell. Because that was something that you came out with. So that these are animals that are left on the side of the road.
Yeah,
and because of our location, we get more than maybe Stowe, because I understand you're the animal officer.
Yes.
Tell my story.
You have a story?
I found you on the side of the road?
Yeah, I live in Wattaquatic, and we found that a pregnant cat had been abandoned and took up shop underneath our front porch and had a litter of kittens.
This year?
This was last year.
Before that?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
It was several years ago.
And then you called Susan?
Called Susan, and Susan, I can't do anything for you.
I don't have the budget.
That's it. Well,
Especially because it's you. She said, well, if you gave me that extra $5,000, I would do it.
the other thing is that, for right or for wrong, dogs are licensed. Dogs have to be, rabies shots. There's a system not that ever does it, but there's a system in place for, monitoring all of that. But cats don't have to be licensed. So because they don't have to be licensed, there's no such thing as a stray cat. So that cat that you may think was in fact, somebody's discarded may in fact be from somebody 3 doors down, and the cat happened to get out. So it's not, you're not comparing apples to apples. But yeah, there was a little Cocker Spaniel mix that was found itself, unfortunately, without its owner, down around up on near the golf course, and it had all kinds of things wrong with it. And because of the generosity of one of the local vets, the dog actually made it into a shelter where it was adopted by a senior citizen couple who had just lost their dog that just happened to look very much like this one, and happy ending, and all of that.
Yeah.
So we tried very hard to have that happen. Sometimes, because the dog may have such character flaws, it would not be placeable safely in in a home, and so those don't have such a happy ending.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear that one. And
we always try to have that be the kind of thing that happens. We have some really very generous, one vet in particular that really goes way and beyond what we would expect. And so with help like that, we're able to save a lot of animals that way.
That's great. That's great. So, well, thank you for coming in, and we'll just take a look at your budget. It is, right now, totally level funded from last year. Wages, the total budget for animal control officer is $19,249, of which, they're requested in 2015, of which $16,849 is made up of wages for yourself and for Phyllis Tower. And no increases there. Just to let everyone know that any COLAs have not been calculated yet, so if there are going to be any changes.
One issue is going to be the amount of money that you're paying for kennel fees.
That's what I was going to bring up.
Yes. It's like, I'm sure everybody's seen Shawshank Redemption, where Morgan Freeman goes to the committee and, he pleads his case, and they say rejected, and he pleads his case again, they say rejected. Then finally he says, pfft, and they give him parole. That's what I've been dealing with in terms of what Bolton's being charged for use of the Stowe Kennel. I pleaded and pleaded and pleaded, and they made it $40 per dog per day. I pleaded and pleaded and pleaded, to absolutely to no avail, so I stopped going to meetings, and then all of a sudden they decided to make it $25.
So the $40 that was July is now $25?
Yes. But
yes, go ahead.
there are times, because the Stowe Kennel has 3 runs, and there was in fact a time last fall in which I had 2 dogs that I'd picked up in Bolton that had come from Harvard, and then there was a 3rd dog that had to be picked up. I didn't feel it was right to tie up all 3 runs in Stowe's kennel with Bolton strays. So I had to send one up with Phyllis, and she hasn't decided yet what she's going to be charging Bolton. What she charges other towns is $40 per dog per day. Which,
Phyllis has a kennel that she...
Yeah, she has, it's a different kind of setup than what Stowe has, but it didn't seem right to me to have the entire kennel, with Bolton's dogs, so that I would have had nothing to do with Stowe. So we sent one Bolton dog up there, and in most cases, the town sort of gets it back because of what we charge, but not always. That little dog that I picked up on, up near the golf course.
because it didn't have an owner.
Right, nobody ever came forward.
Right.
So
if there's an owner, it's...
Yes, it never doesn't show up there because, there's no income listed there. But it sort of goes out of one pocket into another.
So right now, currently, for 2014, you had budgeted 800, probably on the basis of the
because that
40.
was what the committee said,
That was an increase. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's with 800 in 2013 as well. And then this year, $800, but that's...
We've gone through probably almost all of that at this point.
Well, no, only 200.
Then it hasn't been posted.
Okay, because you think you have.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
No question.
So, and that's, at this point, they were charging $40 a day?
Yes. They decided as of the first of the year to charge $25.
Okay. I know you were asked for a level funded budget, to level fund, but $800 per kennel doesn't sound like it's going to be enough. Even with the $25, because that's $10 more than it has been. If you're almost through your $800 through 6 months.
The good news is that I am still charging $40 if an owner comes forward. I'm charging $40 because that is now state mandated.
Okay.
So, it's still going to come back, but it just isn't going to show up that way.
Right. So, of your estimation of what the quantity of animals and the purchase of services should legitimately be at a $25 rate? Well, if you're halfway through the year.
Yes, and we've spent, I think, pretty much almost the whole budget.
So let's say 800 divided by 40 is 20 dogs, right? 20 days. 20 days. So another 20 days times 25
Yeah, that would, you
We'll
know.
give you another 5, so it should be closer to 1,300.
It's pretty hard to predict, because sometimes months will go and, you know, there's nothing.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden, you know, it's like a revolving door.
Yeah, yeah.
In past years, you've used up your supply budget exactly. Is that because you've just been charging this stuff to supplies when you run out of money?
No, I don't think so.
No, they used 411 out of 600.
Well, also this, I think also Pam's dog tags comes out of supplies also. I think
Okay.
that there are certain things from her department
Okay,
that factor into that too.
okay.
Should that be on here somewhere?
I don't know, last year you said it was dogs,
Yeah.
you know, dog food and leashes and that kind of thing, but you think the dog tags might be in
Yeah, I
there too?
think you'd have to ask Pam.
Okay.
But that's a constant expense.
Yeah, that's right.
That's not going to fluctuate wildly from year to year, so we're comparing apples to apples here.
Yeah, it's been running up really closer to $400 for supplies, 460,
Yeah.
then 400, then 400 in 2013, and so far this year it's
Well, I
just,
thought, supply, that would be supplies, services.
yeah,
would be
services are
kennel.
different, the
Okay.
kennel, right, the kennel is totally, I think what Bob was saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is that below the line, below wages, you can pay one overage with an underage in another account. So I think he was asking if you've taken, if there have been overages in purchase of services, if you've paid them off by using
Not
this,
not-
Okay.
To the
okay.
best of my knowledge.
Well,
Actually, Linda would be the one that could probably answer that question.
okay, okay. Or if you're not aware of anything, are you? No, okay. And in-state travel,
Is this you driving around from town to town?
Well, no, it's within Bolton.
and that in the past has been under the $1,000, 700, 800, 800 in 2012, 700 in 2013. Does that, again, it's a difficult item to,
It simply depends on how busy I am.
yeah. So right now, we're through 50% of the year, and the expenses, other than wages, is at 33%. But you're thinking that's because some things haven't been posted yet.
I think that that's probably
Because,
correct.
yeah, if you were to bring that up to closer to 800, then you'd be better. But so, first of all, does anybody have any questions for Susan? And we should probably chat about the purchase of services and if we want to increase that line item.
And you've never come for transfers, I see, right?
Transfers, nothing this year,
No.
but
Ever? Do you remember ever coming? Not having
If
enough
we've
in
done
your
anything,
budget?
it's been very slight.
what will have to be this year.
It will, yes.
And I think probably the reason is, had it been at $15, the kennel fees for a long time?
Forever.
Forever, okay, and then the increase to 40,
40.
yeah, for 6 months of the year.
Yeah,
Right.
in which there were also several dogs that,
Eight
you know,
of them.
didn't have owners.
It did not have.
The other thing that's changed, which is interesting, is it used to be that you kept dogs for 10 days.
Mhm.
Now you keep them for 7. So I'm not quite sure what that will mean in the, you would think automatically, well, that'll mean that the kenneling fees will go down. But
Can we move that to 3? I mean, give them a weekend.
sure, well, yeah, it's as long as they can spend the other 4 days at your house.
Not my dog.
Roughly how many kennel days were there last year total?
I don't
We
remember.
don't know.
Well, if it's at, it charged 530, well, in 2013, it was, 532 divided by 15, right?
Right?
It would have been-
So it would have been 35, and we're talking, right now, we would be budgeting for, well, thinking about 40, so that's not that far off. Because there's been 20 days so far this year,
And
6 months. So that would be 40 for the second, and this is 35, 36 for the entire year last year.
Well, I would budget for 35 at $40.
Well, no, 25, well, 40,
$25.
no, at 25, because it's been lowered to, for 2015, it'll be lowered to 25. It was only $40 for
Are
the
you in
first 6
contact
months.
with them with that, or is
No.
that, could they change it again on us?
Oh, absolutely, they could.
Okay.
It's their kennel.
Then you stop going to the meetings again.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
It used to be 0 though, right?
Yeah, but that was back in the days of Betsy Cusson, when, there was sort of rough justice, and Bolton paid for some of the renovations on the kennel. And what I'd done is Bolton was getting a free ride for years and years and years, and I sat down and figured out if Bolton actually had to pay for the kennel, what they would have spent. And all of a sudden, the door that was rusting got replaced, and some other things, happened. But that was back when there was a dog fund, which it's been, I think, since Betsy left pretty much, was when the dog fund, that whole system stopped. I mean,
Where
there's
do
a
the
lot-
dog licenses go now? They go right to the general fund?
I think so.
All the stuff?
Yeah, I mean, nothing comes back.
Right, but we have to look at, similar to the way that we look at other departments, like the library touts all the time that they, put money into the general fund from late fees and this and that, right? And
Well, the
like
ambulance
receipts and stuff. The dog licensing money, which is unqualified.
Not just dog license, well, that, but
It's
then
not
also the
animal-
amount,
Kennel
and then the
fee.
kennel fees too.
All that stuff, we have
Because
to think about as,
this is directly tied into kennel fees.
I understand, but we have to think about it as a revenue to the town that
We
will
need to
more than
know.
probably offset Susan's whole
Right.
expense line.
Probably, but
That's why I said-
it's not a big enough number to start putting in new processes and tracking and all that
We would
stuff.
try, if it's, yeah, if
I'm
it's
not
40.
asking for that, I'm just
No,
saying we
just
should have an
curious.
awareness that
Yeah.
Yeah,
Susan's
all right.
probably, no matter what she's asking for, she's probably a neutral
Yes.
line item for
Okay.
Bolton's overall budget.
Well,
We
thank
should
you.
think about it that way, not
So we
that,
can find out,
you know,
yeah.
but-
So if we were to do 40 days, which looks like where we're going this year, again, if you did, we want to do 35 days of $25 for fiscal year 2015, that would be $875. We want to do 40 days at $25, it would be $1,000. Right now, we have 800, so it would be a small increase. If we wanted to, not have any increase, we could probably take, $100 out of supplies and maybe $100 out of in-state travel, just increase.
Bump it up to 900 for purchase of services.
I think $1,000.
Like, yeah, I'd rather take it out of supplies
Supplies?
and then,
Well, if we could do 1,000 and take, it would only be a $100 increase. Can we get a number for revenue easily?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. I think 1,000. It's hard not to do that. And it's not using the $40, it's using the $25, which is a conservative number. Does anybody have a feeling on that? 1,000, okay?
The only thing about supplies is I'm not sure that isn't where Pam pays for dog licenses.
Okay, we'll find out.
So,
Yeah, we don't want that. Like he said, but it's never run as high as 600, but we can look at that.
okay.
Yes, David?
Yeah, the theory of staying with the historical when you don't know seems to me the $25 times the 35 days is what would be historical, and that's what, 875, and if you want to call that 900.
Yeah.
And the historical for supplies is certainly, 463 is the highest ever. So I think the idea of
500.
moving 100 from supplies to purchase of services would be right, and then it would still be flat, and you'd be consistent with your idea of being historical. And if she has to come in at the end of the year for a couple $100 to cover extra kennel fees, I think that would be,
That's fine.
Yeah, and the 3-year average on the actuals of 11, 12, and 13 is, 780, so it's right in that neighborhood anyway, so.
Yeah, but you can't do that because it was less money then.
right. It was 15 now.
And they're not going to go down.
20.
But unlikely
No, I'm
they
not
go
saying,
back
I'm not
down.
looking to go down, I'm just-
Yeah.
It gives her the same amount of instances with the new rate.
Right.
Mhm.
No, you're just talking about the line item that says is for services?
So what we would
Okay,
increase
because
that
there are
to...
other things that come out of that. For instance, if one of the dogs that I pick up is not placeable and I have to have it euthanized, that's $100 right there.
Okay.
So it isn't just,
Well, there's maybe-
So am I doing the math of 532, which was what it was actual expenditure in 2013, dividing that by 15 and saying you had 35.
it's not, I'd have to go back and look and see absolutely everything else and whether or not something else was sort of switched around and,
Yeah.
Well, and also we have to understand this is not linear,
Right.
No,
Yeah.
so
no.
we try our best
We
to.
try.
yeah, absolutely.
We're not gonna have you call off the dogs, so
No.
no pun intended.
Or every pun intended.
So, but if you run out of money, you come back and
Yeah.
we give you more.
I understand that there's a porch available.
Yeah. Mesh that over.
Okay, so right now, would the committee agree that we would increase purchase of services to 900, reduce supplies to 500, and keeps everything equal, and maybe that better reflects what's going on? If you find out that that's not good, you can come back, you're coming back to us this year for sure. How do we do that? Because we wouldn't want to come back all the time, every time that there's something. I guess use up
No, but
your budget.
Once the budget is zeroed out,
The
she
total
comes
budget.
back and says, here's my estimate of what we're gonna
Here's
do.
my average over the
Yeah.
past
The total.
10 months, and here's where I project the
Well,
next 2 months to be.
zeroed out now,
and give
yeah.
Yeah, you don't do
Yeah.
it instance by instance.
Yeah, so we'll probably pretty soon need to take a look at that and see if you need to come in.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. All right, anything else?
Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you, thanks for the great work you do.
Thanks.
I'm gonna discover dogs. Okay, next on our program is Margie. Come on up, Margie. How are you today? Good. Good, good. You so much. So, this is for the ambulance department, and I don't think that we need you to go through like the detail of what you do, except that you do more than just go to someone's house if they call 911 and need an ambulance.
Sure.
And if you could just quickly, in a minute, just tell us what other kinds of services you provide.
Yeah, a majority of the service that we provide is the emergency care. But we also do standby for the town, particularly large events, parades, that kind of thing, the race that we had last year. And as well as if we have any kind of storm where we're expecting that we're going to have a hard time navigating to anybody who needs us, we'll do some standby work. We do have one full-time employee who works weekdays, and he responds to all 911 calls, and does a lot of administrative functions. And we go when they call us, and that's what we do.
Very good. Okay, thank you. So, just generally looking at the overall budget, in 2015, you've done it's a good job and keeping it level funded with an overall, the total budget for your ambulance department is $184,823, which is an increase of 1.2% over 2014. Of that, $123,803 is for wages, with some training in that as well, and the balance of $61,020 is for other items. And again, just noting that there are no COLAs have been added to the wage line items yet. So if we can, just generally, if you can just comment on, is there anything different as you see 2015 over 2014, just as a general overview?
Yeah.
And then we'll get down to the specific line items.
Okay. A few things that, obviously, I have a hard time estimating our call volume. So historically, we went up about 3% every year, although I've seen it kind of leveling off. That makes me nervous because it usually means the next year is a bigger push, but So that's, I never really can say, what that's going to be. I do know that I'm going to have an increase when we get a new ambulance, more likely than not, to the operating budget, in the fact that the new ambulance will most likely need, and I'm terrible at explaining this, DEF fluid. Which
Yes,
is
you were trying at the
yeah,
selectmen
and
meeting.
I still don't have it down, but apparently it's an emissions thing, so you have to add gas and this DEF fluid, and that'll probably add about $1,000 to my operating budget.
Is that what's reflected in this coastal medical billing?
No,
Okay.
Coastal is the company that that does all our billing for us. So the more money we pay them, that means the more money we're bringing in. So it's a good thing. So they basically get paid a percentage of what they bring in.
All right, so I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but where have you built in this?
I have
not.
You have not.
because
Okay,
I don't know
if we
what
have
we
it in.
But you're not using it with the current ambulance?
Correct. It's new admission standards, so it's new ambulance bills.
It's just on the ambulances? Like it's not on every diesel engine?
No, I guess not, but the ambulance companies that we're working with are all expect that we'll have that with the next version.
And just to do, we'll get into the ambulance after we go through the operating budget, but the ambulance, when you're looking at, if it were approved at town meeting, it is, probably wouldn't be purchased until the end of the calendar year, which would be
Correct.
halfway into the fiscal year.
Right.
So some of the costs that might be associated with it would be less because of that, just like, okay.
But it's just one of those things that came up when I was meeting with the vendors, and I was like, oh boy, that's increase the operational budget. I didn't really expect.
Okay. And it's like you said, it's not included right now.
Correct.
Okay. So, would you like to walk us through wages to begin with? And any changes from, well, we could talk about each of the line items because I know that they, can be sometimes confusing. For example, in wages, EMT call and training, it's 70,300 last year, and I know that was increased because of call volume anticipated. It was 70,300 for fiscal 2015.
Yep. So the only change or increase to the wages budget would be if the call volume increased. We don't have a scheduled, our responders have not had a pay increase for several years, and I'm not seeking one at this point. And overall, the only thing that drives that number is the call volume. If we have to do any kind of standby work, so storm coverage, that kind of thing. And that's just as it comes. As of this year, we haven't had to do any.
Are you gonna run out of money this year, do you think?
Well,
But
expenditures to date on all, in your wage categories total, and did not compute, it was only about a third through half of the
Yeah,
year. Is that because of less call volume this year?
yeah, and we haven't had any big storms that we've had to stand by for, that kind of thing.
So we know the jumping off point is probably pretty good. In years past, we've been at this table and you proposed level funding, and we said, well, wait a second, you already spent
Yeah.
75%. So we feel better about level today, more
Yeah, we've done a
better
lot
than we
of
had
work.
before.
Yeah.
And I think you did a lot of work last year
We
to
did.
bring that up, and you're not seeing anything that would say what you calculated last year was either way over or way under, even though this is running at 33%.
Yeah. No, I don't think so. I think it's just, one call could
Yeah.
drastically change this, but, it's,
But you think a lot of it's influenced because of not having large storms too at this point?
Yeah.
Well, this is through December, I don't know what January looks like.
Knock on wood.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
still- We're not out of the woods yet.
Yeah.
But last year, I had $2,400 worth of storm coverage.
But you are increasing shifts by $1,120.
Yeah, let's see, we can go through that.
I was getting the.
Yeah, well, yeah,
I'm sorry.
and she's got an explanation for that too.
Yep.
So everything else, and the EMT coordinator is, everything else remains flat.
Yep.
That's related to the Neshoba. So these are all, a lot of these are driven by call volume, right?
Yep.
Mr. Farrell's wages and training, that's more of dictated by, also by call volume.
Yep. And the shifts, I do have, the explanation
Yeah.
is that the fire union started getting paid for their
Yeah,
standby
I
work.
just read it, I'm sorry.
I completely
didn't
forgot,
see it. Yeah,
actually.
no,
I'm
it's-
glad I wrote it down, because I was like,
No, no.
oh, no, we don't have to do that.
So the standby work is going to the parades and,
Yeah, we do the kid care fair, and we love doing it, but I can't justify one truck you get paid and one truck you don't. So, and it's also better for us because they're in town and we need them. They're right there.
So I guess the philosophical question is, we've done a lot of work to get the budget more reflective of the recent trends in call volume. And we did a lot of work last year to do that. This year, we're not in the same hole that we've been in historically. We're actually, we've got 2/3 of the budget left with less than half of the fiscal year to go. And so, I guess to be fair, we would need to think about whether we should reduce the budget based off of the fact that, I'm just throwing it out there, I don't agree with doing that, but to
Yeah.
be fair with this, the flip side of our logic, we'd have to say, well, is this a new trend? I think that's a slippery slope, especially because one year doesn't a trend make, and I wouldn't be comfortable doing it. I'm just throwing
and
it
it's
out
really a
there.
half a year.
Yeah, no, it's a half year though that
Yeah.
we've spent 33%.
Right, no, but what's difficult even with that is that,
That's right.
you know.
It could be
it's not all
very
driven,
cyclical.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
Do you have a
know,
sense of
Second
when this happened last?
But when we,
Yeah, this similar environment, was it, 3 years ago, or, I mean, can
we
you
were
think
over?
recently that, that
we've
call,
we've always, I've come every year, twice a year, because I typically have to do transfers.
Yeah, so we'll see I think that this is too soon to really make a huge change. But I wanted to also ask you, and then David, I know you have a question, you have a question as well, that a lot of what's in here too, not a lot, but of the increases, stipends are included. Of the training, there was an increase from $1,200 to $3,000 in training, or even more than that, I think.
Well, we
$3,500.
added a training budget.
Well, actually included in that line item, originally had been $1,200, and then we added $1,800 plus $500, $2,300 to the training that's in that line item to bring it up to the $70,300. So it consisted of $58,800 for wages, $8,000 for stipends, and then a total of $3,500 for training. And I just didn't know whether you've seen, and you were, one thing that had been talked about was to get some data about how much training you were doing and how many people attended and that kind of thing. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to do that.
No, I haven't. But I can't.
Or if you
It's
can't-
relative, well.
If you can,
EMS training for 2013, fiscal year 13 was $2,400. And that's just what we would pay people to come in. They get $15 per training. We typically do 2 trainings a month.
so that was $2,400.
Yeah. And then we have some money built in there to bring in outside trainers, CPR, that kind of thing.
So it's, again, any way of telling if that piece of the budget, the training piece, which was increased quite a bit, you also have that $1,500 line item to get some outside training people in, but this is, I think this was just increased to cover the training by the amount of hours that people were going to be getting training. There's a whole calculation that was done, $15 a meeting, it was raised to $17 a meeting, 2 times a month for 8 people to get up to the amount that was done last year. So I'm just wondering if there was if there's any way to get a handle on if that's, first of all, it was raised to $17, and if that's being done.
Well, I didn't know that it was raised to
It's
$17. Yeah, it's been
The calculate, well, what's included in the budget was another $500 to raise it to 17.
Mine
I
was-
just watched the meeting.
14,
Mm-hmm.
they're getting $15 an hour.
I remember the discussion that you had, about bringing it up.
Oh, was it, so was fire getting 17? Is that
Fire is
right?
Yeah,
getting
we-
$10 for six,
Oh.
to
we
bring it
don't-
to 6 hours,
We
yeah.
wanted to make them consistent.
Consistent, right. So you didn't want to go to a certain hour, by hour.
Well, we didn't want to penalize them.
Yeah, so then you raised it to $17. That was what was talked about at the meeting, to raise it to $17. Because the piece, to make up the total of the $70,300 that was approved in 2014, which you're asking for the same amount in 2015. Like I said, it was $58,800 for wages, $8,000 for stipends. Originally, you had $1,200, but that was raised to $3,000 for training, and then another $500 to bring it up to $17.
Yeah, now I remember that, but it didn't happen.
It didn't happen.
So how soon can we start making it happen?
Is it you that pays, is that how it goes, that you pay them, or?
Donna pays them,
Yeah,
but they submit the payroll, they're the ones that put the rate and everything in.
Okay,
So you can just change it right away now, all right? I wouldn't go back, but I
Yeah.
would start
Yeah.
moving forward to the, what we
so you'll have a
did.
little bit of in there for the cover, maybe something, but, and this year, let's say that people will be paid $17, but I think the other thing that was asked is if you could get data on how much time is spent. This is
Yeah.
historical data. You can go back to 2013 maybe, and then come back and send an email to me.
yeah, well, we don't.
And the
do-
number of people that are actually going, because we were estimating 24 sessions a year, 2 a month, times 8 people,
Okay,
I'm 17.
times 17.
yeah.
I remember that.
3264.
So I can do that. I can go back and, because we track it all through IMC, so I can
Oh, good.
pull that up relatively quickly. But it's not per hour, because we.
No, it's not per hour, you're right. I don't mean per hour. But amount of sessions, I guess, is better.
Okay.
Amount of sessions times the number of people, just to see if it's in the ballpark, so to know that if going forward, if what we're doing makes sense. And if you can just, you want me to send you an email, or you'll send me something?
Yeah. I can send you some.
Okay, just so we can bring it up at the next meeting, just to sort of button everything up around the, around that. You know how I was doing today.
Yep, refresh my memory.
Okay, how about questions? You had something? on-
I was just commenting on Randy's idea that we should be looking at the possibility of reducing the budget, which I would also caution against, only in that you've mentioned that weather has a lot to do with that, and we are now in the second half of the year where there's a lot of weather, and being that it sounds like there was a new kind of process, and
Yeah.
look at this last year, you'd almost want to go a full year to
Yeah,
make sure
I think so too.
it's effective.
David,
Yeah,
this is going to be just generally on wages, then we'll move
Yes.
to the other stuff, okay?
yes, just wages. The top line, the 5112 line.
Yeah,
The history on that is averaging maybe high 50s. It seems to me 63,000 ought to be the right number, not 70,300.
Well, it's-
And this year, we're running below the budgeted amount.
there are so many pieces of it though, David, so it's the 58, of this, I know that's what you're saying. There was a calculated, there was a methodology last year that took the call volumes from 2012, 11, 10, and 9, averaged them and added 10%, and came up with an estimated of 420 calls for 2014. I don't know where you are, I mean, obviously you're not there yet, because, and I, maybe that was wrong last year, but unless we let it play out somewhat, to see if this, because we've only gone through a half a year of this.
Well, but, so I consider that playing it out, especially being that far below, And then when you look at the historical numbers also being below, I think it's
Well,
getting into this safety margin stuff that I thought we were trying to avoid.
I'd like to know that that's only 5 months because they actually get paid for December and January.
It's just renewed. Oh, it's 5 months?
Yeah, yeah.
5 months,
Yeah.
okay.
Was there an add to staff? Over the,
No,
the same number of people?
We've been running short a couple years in a row, and so we decided, all right, rather than Margie was coming to us every spring for money. So we said, let's just
More than
fix
once.
this. Right, actually, that's right.
Yeah, in 1 year anyway.
And so we said, all right, let's just fix this, and let's get a number in there that's it's higher than what we've been running with, but not wildly.
Yeah.
And
I think this is
Randy came up with the method.
working on
which
wildly.
I think
Well, the only objection I have to your saying that, David, is last year, you were here in the whole discussion, and you were very much on board. Not that I'm not criticizing anything, but I don't know if based on what we did last year, the committee did last year, to come up with that number, if we have enough knowledge yet. If we're still in that kind of position when we take a look at it, going forward, I think then we can say, yeah, we really did overdo it. But I think that, given that the committee, and you were there as a, working as a selectman, and you were in agreement to all of this, that I don't believe we have enough information yet to pull it back.
Circumstances are different now. I mean,
You're not a selectman anymore.
no, we didn't know as much about the tax rate as we do now.
The tax rate,
Well,
I don't
we're
really
never-
want to get into the
we're
tax
never
rate
gonna-
discussion
yeah,
right
we're never
now.
gonna-
So
yeah.
I'm not going to, we're looking at one department here to make a decision.
But that's a reason for me being perhaps more conservative about how I would look at these things than I would have a year ago.
Okay, and the tax rate went up 1%, 1.1% over last year, which was moderate, given other
And the
raises.
tax rate doesn't indicate anything. It doesn't indicate a rise or fall in homeowner prices. It doesn't indicate any change in the way that the grading agencies rate our debt. It's an interesting statistic, but taken all alone by itself, it's meaningless. It's only when you put it in context with other things that it acquires some meaning.
Well, I don't want to debate that tonight, and I know you
Well,
don't want me to debate that.
you're bringing it up.
So I think, I don't know, I'm going to leave it up to the committee. We certainly hear and know what your concerns are, David, but I'll speak for myself first, and then I'd like to hear from the committee members. I feel that it's just too early, given the amount of work and thought that went into last year's preparation, to come up with an estimate that everybody agreed to, that, and if this is only 5 months, I didn't do the math, what it would be for 6 months, but for a half a year, you can.
Another $2,000 or $3,000.
So, I would be hesitant to cut it back at this point. If we do, and then Margie, and we find out it's exactly right, then we're going to be really wrong. Then we're going to be, penalizing 2015 for something we just don't have enough information. That's what I'm going to say, and I think we'll just go around. How do you?
Sure. I also
And if you
watched-
have questions.
and I was taking notes, trying to figure, and
Look at my piece
there
of
was a
paper.
lot of thought
Yeah.
that went into trying to specify something that can't really be, it's not the same every year. And so I appreciated that process, and I agree. I think that at least for a year, to let it play out and see where we're at, will at least give us sound information moving forward.
And and just as another statement, I'm sorry I'm butting in, but this is a flat budget, which is what we asked for. Julie, you have something to say? You're welcome to.
I'm
Going around the
comfortable with
room.
leaving it where it is.
You're comfortable with it is, Bob?
Well, although the run rate is much less than what we would expect at this point, there's no indication that that's a long-term. We're doing the fiscal 15 budget. And even if 14 comes in well below what we expect, given the averages of going into the high 50s, with an increase, you'd expect a bigger bump in fiscal 15. So I think it's reasonable to keep it where it is.
Randy?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was obviously involved in the process, so I think we tried to club it really good last year. I think it's too early to tell whether we over-clubbed it or not, so I'm fine with leaving it as well.
Ditto, same thing.
Okay, Brad?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that is unpredictable in terms of, because
And I
it's
think
based on.
you'll keep your eye on it, and we'll be watching it too. I mean, the only other interesting thing, but it's probably meaningless to see where we were at this time last year, as far as expenditures versus budget.
Because we have, I mean, I was looking at numbers last night. The calls just range wildly. I had one month that was 37 calls for the month, and then I had one month that was 15. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, we
just never
took
know
a
what
pretty
it's
good
gonna be.
average last year. We didn't just take.
No, it's 4 years.
Yeah, we took a 4-year average, so I think history plays, let's let history play itself.
I think, and because we're all in agreement with that, I think that's where we'll stay.
Yeah, you're an honest person. You wouldn't bury that surplus in some other line item, right? Julie has an excellent track record of clawing the money back on 6:30, so we'll get it out of you. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so moving down the budget, the non-wage items, purchase of services. Now, this did you analyze this any more than you were able to do last year? What's included in
Yes.
purchase? Yay!
So, purchases of service. So, things like fiscal year 13, CPR cards, oxygen, which we can bill out for, CMed dues, inspections. We use
Inspections being of equipment or?
inspections of our cot, inspections of the ambulance. We use a service called I Am Responding, and that just tells people who's on their way to the call, so we know that we have people on the way to the call. That contract renewal, EpiPen licenses, air cards for our laptop, CPR instructor, recertification reimbursement, those type of things.
So instructors are not in there except for the CPR? Because that was, I think, the confusion last year, where if there was any training.
Yeah, sorry, we took the CPR cards out of there. And last year we didn't, so this is fiscal 13, so I didn't have a training budget at that point, so it came out of purchases of service.
Okay, good. So if that is right now flat, and to date spent about 50% of the line item, so it looks like it's running about. And expenditures over the year, like last year was above budget, and it's actually been higher. It's higher than. We'll see what you come in this year.
Yeah, and things like the oxygen and CMed dues, as the call volume increases, those increase.
Can I ask one question that you guys can ask?
Yeah.
Can you see, there's so many variables with wages. Obviously, we don't need to rehash them all, but call volume's one of them, but then there was also this average responder per call.
Yep.
We tried to average what it was. Have you seen a difference in the first 5 months here with the historical average? Okay.
People have been doing, with the I Am Responding, people are doing a fantastic job of placing themselves. If they're too far away from the call and they see that there's 4 other people going, they just don't go. So it's really kind of working. If they see that, we need help, they'll go. So, we still get those calls where we have more people than we need, but we also still get those calls where we have 2 people and 3 people would be better.
Okay, sorry.
And the only other thing that I'll add that is also a factor is the duration of the call. So if we go over 2 hours, then we obviously get paid more. 2 years ago, we started a new EPCR system, so it was taking a little bit longer to get everything, all the paperwork in order. So we're taking a little bit longer per call. That obviously, the learning curve has gone down on that. We are actually going to get another new EPCR system. So that might bump up a little bit, but I feel like because we're already electronic, it'll probably be a smaller learning curve.
Was that wasn't the system that you went to,
Software
the article, the
purchase.
software
Yes,
purchase?
for last year,
So-
so we're in the process of getting that
Okay.
installed now. So there'll be a little bit of a curve. It's actually a much friendlier system to use. There'll still be a little bit of a curve, but it'll be much less than it had been.
So where I saw that there hadn't been any expenditure on it to date, it's in-house.
Well, no, we're working on it, yeah, we're trying to get all those things buttoned up and working with our computer company and stuff like that.
So why would it, and just, let's not belabor, but why would it have taken 6 months to start the work when you had the money on July 1st?
Well, we did a little bit more research on it, and then we were going back and forth with the company on the contract and stuff like that, so, and now there's a piece on our side, there was actually a piece I held up because there was a piece that wasn't working, and I wasn't gonna go to the same company if they didn't fix the piece that was working. So I said, get this working and then we'll talk about it.
No, it's just the contract negotiations took.
Well, yeah, it wasn't even really negotiations, it's just they had to fix a piece that wasn't working. I said, well, I'm not gonna put in a system that's not working if you can't
No.
fix this issue, so.
And the purchase of a new ambulance or non-purchase of an ambulance would not impact, changing the software to something new to accommodate a new ambulance, so.
It lines up with, what the police department has and stuff like that, so.
Yeah, that was nice, yeah. Okay.
Just curious about the inspection of the fire truck. I mean, the ambulance. What do they do? I mean, do you get a rating or?
Yep, well, we get a pass-fail, so they
Oh,
come
that's
in.
it? Just
Yeah.
pass-fail?
Well, yes, they come in and they basically have this form that they go through, and they inspect more than just the ambulance, they inspect all the paperwork and all their, licensure and stuff like that. So, they go through, and if they have any items that you need to fix, they'll give you like what do they call it, a report, and they'll say you need to fix this within so much time, and you just have to submit what you fix, and every year they find something, and quite frankly, you want them to find something, or else they keep looking. So, it's, those kind of things. They take a look at all of our policies and procedures, and sometimes it's simple stuff, like your trash container's not tied down, tie it down. Sometimes it's, we want you to make a change to this policy and procedure.
Any other questions so far? Okay, so ALS services, I understand that that's just what it sounds like. It's,
Yep, so we contract with companies around us to come in and provide ALS services. We pay them right off the bat, contracted rate, and then we bill out at a higher rate to our patients. So most of that money we recuperate in the receipt reserve.
Postal medical, that billing, that's your billing company, and that's based on volume, so that's staying, well, that actually is a little bit higher this year, 6,500.
Yeah, which is a good thing,
5,500.
because that means that we're bringing in more money.
That's, but we were not raising the, the call, EMT call rate, the call volume, I don't believe, because we're keeping that
No,
at
but
70.
you can't really, like, the difference between our, insured, underinsured patients, any refusals that we get, we don't bill out for refusals. So, that's a different mix. And then also, depending on the type of insurance they have, the rates are different. So, it's very difficult to kind of.
But you felt you needed to put another $1,000 into that for 2015? Well, your explanation was based on call volume, but we're not increasing call volume.
I don't know. Perhaps there's a rate increase, not to the company, but to what we can charge out. Maybe that's what I was thinking of. I don't.
Well, that shouldn't affect your budget, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
because they get a percentage.
Can you check on that and just
Yeah,
get back to us?
yeah.
Because if it's based solely, your explanation is, it says call volume. If it's based solely on call volume, then there
I
shouldn't
think
be.
I was just looking at, we went over budget in fiscal year
Yeah, you did.
2013. So I think that's what I was really.
Right now, you're about halfway through it. Using $5,500, you have spent $2,700, and so you have $2,800 left.
But again, that's probably 5 months because she hasn't gotten billing yet.
Right. And also too, I mean, what they bring in per month is drastically different, you know. You can see, this is kind of what they post every month, and sometimes it's $8,000, sometimes it's $21,000. Well, that's what they committed to, but here, so.
What you're thinking on this, on the call volume, and the increase on it for
call
medical,
volume,
for coastal medical, I think to me it should be still flat, but.
I think she's going on the fact that 2011, it was 6,600. 12 may have been only 55, but then 13 went back up to 62.
Yeah, so she is kind of looking at it as being flat. Not from 14, but from the actual.
Yeah,
The actual.
yeah.
Okay. You seem fine with it? Everybody's good leaving it at 6,500?
Yeah, given the past give the past actuals.
Going through outside training, oops, no, there's something, repairs. Repairs.
If you're getting a new machine halfway through the year,
Well, so, I guess that, we still haven't decided that. So, I'm really hopeful that we're getting a new one.
that's a good point. The town's got to approve it.
Yeah, the second part is that I really would like to keep this current ambulance, and I don't know, I haven't heard thoughts on that either. I've
We
definitely
need a
talked to
climate-controlled space for it, which we don't have.
it actually, Brownie thinks it'll fit in the old fire station if we change the
Well,
antennas.
But that's a bigger discussion.
Don't get me started on
Yes.
Well, we can burn down the old fire.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's fine. So that's, I don't want to just slash it.
No, until you have approval, you got to keep it there.
But so we'll get into this later, I'm sure, or provided that's where Terry wants to go with the agenda, but, my feeling is that the new ambulance is pretty much a 100% done deal, right? Because we're gonna pay for it with ambulance receipts. And so,
But the trade-in isn't, maybe.
well, yeah, we have to talk about the cost, but I've done some math that I can share with you guys. But I think, for all intents and purposes, there'll be an article on the warrant that purchases a new ambulance with ambulance receipts, and it's like,
Right.
why would that fail, right?
I understand.
Yeah.
I agree with that, but
So, what you're saying, but the thing is, what also Margie has said, that purchase will not be finalized until
Yeah,
probably July, so there's
she might
going
be
to have a year
Yeah.
plus, a little, there's
Yeah,
got to be repairs anyway,
I mean,
so.
last year I came in, that was a big
last
part of
year-
my transfer, was a
64,
But then she
yeah.
needs the $1,000 of gas.
Your
out.
budget was only $1,250.
Right.
And so it probably went up a lot because of the aging vehicles, up
Exactly.
to
And that's
5,000.
exactly what we did.
Yeah,
So we're
so,
talking $1,500, Terry, though, because if we take it from 5,000 to
Down to
2,500, then we
plus
add in the
1,000,
1,000,
yeah,
that's
so-
3,500.
yeah,
So I'd be comfortable suggesting that change now.
Yeah, I think.
I think it's pretty likely that we're gonna
yeah, we're,
do the machine.
But how long is it gonna take to pull the trigger on that?
well, that's, we
6
cover it
months
for
on
half a year.
software.
2,500.
Well, so what we would do is, once we get approval, well, we could go out to bid prior to getting approval, but it's a 6-month build time before we award the contract. We obviously can't award a contract before we get approval. So it is 6 months, at least, given. And with an ambulance build, you want to get it going, because it's at least 6 months, it could be longer, so,
I think it said 69, actually.
yeah.
You're gonna keep the old one in service that whole time, right? Until
Right,
they have it.
yeah, because we
Don't want to go.
don't have anything else.
Safety.
But there's so many decisions that need to be made, right? Because the old ambulance, if we get rid of it, it has some salvage value that will offset the cost of a new ambulance, not by much, but it will offset it, and you're arguing to keep it. I've heard this argument before. I think it's a great idea if we find a place to have it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, can't,
But then we still need to maintain it.
we need to maintain it, we need to rehab the old fire station in some
Insurance.
way. We need, so there's a whole bunch of things that's why I almost would like to look at the new ambulance as
Standalone.
As a standalone, forget it, we get rid of the old one on an assumption basis.
Even if we got rid of the old one, the money wouldn't come in the same fiscal year that we pay for the new one. It might. It might, but it wouldn't necessarily happen that way. So I think we do have to keep it as two separate transactions in our minds.
So is that what, I'm sorry.
So if we're talking about repairs now, and if we, how does everybody feel comfortable enough to, and not take into consideration the maintenance of the old ambulance? So we would lower it to 3,500, which would be 2,500 plus 1,000.
You would happen to remember what took place in 13, on what?
I would put the 1,000 somewhere else.
Yeah, we needed new tires. That was the biggest ticket item, but we had,
Diesel looks like it's,
our Plymouth lamp
No,
broke.
it's in the 1,000.
We had some oil leaks that was actually warranty,
So you wanted
but we still had a few things to pay for that. Our airbags needed rehabbing.
So
Twice.
So, I mean, clearly 13 was a big year.
Yeah.
So,
so let me ask you, if you, that fuel additive thing, what would that be? That would be classified as diesel or?
I would put it under diesel.
Yeah.
Let me clarify, because I looked it up
Oh, good for
a
you.
few moments ago.
Oh,
It doesn't actually mix with the fuel.
It's two different tanks.
It goes into, it's actually sprayed, it's 70% water, and it gets sprayed into the exhaust before it gets to the catalytic converter. So if you,
I mean, do you do that, it has to be done all the time?
yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's a
starting in
component.
2010. It's mandatory on all large diesel engines.
We have equipment, we have repairs, that's what we have.
So, I would leave that in repairs.
So, if we're looking at repairs again,
3,000.
We
So-
get it, who doesn't?
Well, I guess it's,
You can buy this stuff
yeah.
at Napa or
Right.
anyplace else.
It's
You
a
just
tank.
gotta know to
It's-
put it in the correct place
Exactly.
under the hood.
It's like your, well, it's actually, the tanks are side by side, they're color coded. I've seen a couple demos, and it's just like windshield wiper fluid. You just have to know to put it in every however
Is there a
often.
light that comes on that you're on?
I asked about that, and they're like, no, you'll know. I'm like, okay.
so if we put it, if we put, that's exciting. If we put the DES up back into repairs, so we have $2,500 for
Half a
a
year.
half a year, 1,000 for the other half, and $500 for DES, that brings you to 4,000, so we could lower repairs to 4,000. How does everybody,
5,000 for the other half?
for general, I mean, something
Repairs of the
happens,
new
but
engines?
because, well, but look
Covered
at
under
it,
warranty.
but it's covered under warranty.
So I think you have an argument for 3,000.
yeah.
I'm okay. I mean, I know where to find it, so.
Yeah, but I mean, if you get a new ambulance on January 1st, and if it breaks between January 1st and the end of the fiscal year, you're not gonna pay for repairs on a brand new
And
ambulance.
I'd put that additive under diesel, but.
No, we just talked about it, that it's not really, that's not a gas
It's not really a
additive.
fuel.
It's a fluid.
So is blood. Do you think they put blood under diesel?
Where do you think where in here do you think the windshield wiper stuff is,
I mean,
Mr.
just
Smart
going to make a
Guy?
comment to our esteemed fire department people that are here. I'm going to ask Margie to stay
Yeah,
afterwards
it shouldn't be
anyway,
under
because I
repairs.
noticed that,
Why didn't go into supplies?
wait just a sec. So I'm just saying, I'm sorry this is running a little bit late, it's going to run later, but I'm going to ask Margie to stay anyway, even though I forgot to say that I was going to do that, because you guys are like joined at the hip. And I think that sometimes things come up and say, well, but is that what fire's doing? Is that what the ambulance is doing? So if you don't mind, if you could stay, and then you can look this as one happy meeting.
You know,
We're not really running over your little early.
I'd rather leave it at 5. If everything goes right, we get the new ambulance January 1st. If it doesn't, we're just going to be going on the repairs budget. If you guys really want to lower it to 4, I'm not going to jump up and down about that, but
No, we're suggesting 3, actually.
Yeah, 3 now. I mean, I would probably lower coastal medical billing, but as well. So I think let's bring it down to 3,000 and see what happens.
I think Margie's got a check though on coastal medical before before we touch it.
Yeah.
That's right, but I think,
Yep.
we might find, Okay, so it's, we'll lower that to 3,000. Training, last year you got a training budget for 1,500, you're asking for the same thing. Is that looking like it's working well for you?
Yep.
Good. You're able to bring some people in from the outside. Other, diesel, the call, we're keeping call volume the same, so would be dependent on that, right? $1,200.
Well, 1,200 is for office.
I'm sorry, I cannot go across, okay. Office supplies, 1,200. I need one, a little ruler.
Use that.
Okay. Anybody have anything to say about office supplies? Okay, diesel. Initially, I was saying that might go down if our call volume was going down, but right now we're keeping call volume at the same, so the 4,000 looks like it's a
more fuel efficient.
good question.
And I'm not sure. I just don't know.
Uniforms, still good? The $500? I mean, anybody, I'm sorry.
The price of diesel has come down, just to go back to that, so
Oh, okay.
I think we're good on that.
Okay,
Regardless of the efficiency of the new one.
thank you. Do you have a diesel?
I do.
Yeah, I thought you did. Uniforms, this last year you said that the $500 pretty much consisted of $300 for allowance for Dave and some t-shirts for the staff, so that still works for you, given that we had the large purchases in the prior years?
Yep.
And then Neshoba High School training, $15,820, that stays the same. And finally, equipment. From last year's discussion on equipment, it was pretty much all surrounded the $20,000 for the purchase of software. What else is included in equipment?
Well, we've always had an equipment line item.
Right.
Basically, anything that we need to, so our disposables.
Consumables.
Oh, so
Yeah.
it's more like supplies.
It's more time depressors.
Yeah, and
What, the lollipop, the ones with the lollipops in them?
some of our defib pads, any kind of disposable, so O2 masks, head blocks. We have actually 2 head block systems, one that's disposable, one that's not. Straps for our cots, supplies for the jump kits, 4x4s, that kind of stuff. Any kind of equipment that we need, every now and then the state comes in and says, that backboard needs to be put to bed, so we have to get a new backboard, that kind of stuff.
Okay, so this, just a second here. So that takes us through the budget with one change, and with you coming back to us talking a little bit about coastal medical, seeing what that increase was for. And,
Well, the coastal,
and then
we
on
talked
the
about
top.
historically, it was,
Oh, that's right, that was his.
yeah, so what I
Okay.
have to come back to you about is the number of trainings.
Yes, I'm sorry. you're right.
Trainings and the people per year, and then we'll have to change the rate in IMC for that.
It looks to me like we could knock $1,000 out of equipment.
I'm the same. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Same thing.
The one thing I just want to be careful about is, fine, go ahead, why don't you respond to that?
So, last year I knew I came back for a big transfer, and I was pretty, I was like, no more equipment for us a year, so I really kind of, things that we could have gotten or probably should have gotten, we didn't, just because I knew I had such a big transfer in on the wages and the repairs.
Like what, Margie? Can you think of anything?
Off the top of my head, probably not, but
Okay.
but just things like, hold off the rest of the year before you put on, till next month to get more nasal cannulas or,
But even though you had the budget for equipment, you decided not to spend it?
Yeah, because, and
Okay.
I've historically tried to, if I have a problem in one place, I try to make up for it where I can in another,
Okay.
but.
We try not to do that.
The proposal I made brings you down to $5,500, which is still $700 over the top of what you had. Would $6,000 be okay? Or do you think that'll be too tight?
Just reduce it by 500.
See, right now, again, you haven't spent that much, but I don't know if that's,
I'm okay with 6,000.
Okay.
I'm just looking
Thank
at
you.
the actuals.
yeah, they've been lower. But then what she's saying is she's been underspending there. But not to anybody, not to the risk of anybody's
Yeah,
health.
no, yeah, it wasn't.
Only-
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah,
But only because you might be short somewhere else. Isn't that what you just said?
yeah.
So, she's taking from equipment to pay for something else, somewhere else, I just don't think that justifies leaving the money in there. If she needs it somewhere else, I'd like to know.
Well, I think it was a
It's not telling
general,
me.
I mean, I don't know, I don't want to put words in your mouth. It sounds to me more like a general philosophy.
Exactly.
That-
So,
that,
you know.
Because if you look at it, she really has not necessarily.
I wasn't gonna
Have
just
to-
spend it
well,
just to
how
spend
would
it.
you know? How would you know?
Well, because then she'd be, wherever she'd be over, I can't really see that. Anyway, I don't know. Well, would you like to propose a different
No,
number?
I think 6,000's fine, but I
Okay.
just,
Okay.
no, we typically try not to do that.
No, it's just way, 6,500 is just way, way over all the other historical there.
Yeah.
It's way, it's not just high, it's way
Way
over
over.
that.
So even.
We have in the past done transfers from that line item to other places.
That's fine.
so-
Okay.
That's fine.
So if we adjust other
We
places.
encourage that.
yeah.
So, two changes. What did we end up on? 3,000 for the repairs and 6,000 for the equipment. And then just to hear back from you. So, what's the feeling of, we haven't really had capital planning in yet to talk about purchases, except that we know you were just at the selectmen, and we know we've already had, we've had fire departments come in and talk about their fire engines. So if you had anything you wanted to share, I have a handout that you would put in.
Yeah, and I didn't bring, I can send it to you, all on it.
If you send it to,
I can send it to you with the other stuff I sent.
okay, you can get it sent out. And probably want to update it for the
Yeah.
cost of the expected new ambulance. So you want to just
Yeah.
walk us through your thinking on this, and then we'll probably wait to have capital planning?
Yeah, all right, I want to give a brief overview too of where we are.
Oh, yeah, that's right, I'm sorry.
Do you want me to do that now, or do you want me to do it?
Well, why don't we'll start with the revenue side first, if you don't mind. Randy will first tell us where the money might come from.
So historically, we obviously have this ambulance receipts fund that is replenished or it's funded every month by basically the calls that Margie goes on and with the ambulance, and the insurance company reimburses us into this fund. And so historically, what this fund's been used for is, in theory, it was to fund a new ambulance purchase over time. And we have been dipping into this account on a yearly basis to infuse the operating budget with additional sources of revenue. And so over the several years past, we were taking $130,000, $120,000, and what we, in identifying with Margie last year that her hope was to get a new ambulance for fiscal 15, I took a look at the fund balance at the time and sort of the average of the monthly replenishments. I came up with a schedule to sort of get us to a fund balance that would fund a new ambulance for 15. And at that time, we also took down the amount of money that we took into the budget to $77,500, which is what Julie has as a projection for 15 as well. All right, so that's some of the background. What's happened since then is, number one, I planned for a $225,000 ambulance purchase, and I believe that was $250 minus roughly $25 in salvage value. And now the number that's being promoted is $250, sort of as a straight cost. And I think that's what we really should look at, because there's more decisions to be made on what we do with the other ambulance and if there's an offset to the cost. So that's number one, where we were off. And number two, the amount of replenishment that I was using on a monthly basis last year was $11,232. And based on a spreadsheet that Julie provided me that had sort of 11 months of 13, the average is really more like $9,350. So anyway, so long story short is we have, according to the information Julie gave me, the ambulance fund at the end of November had $224,694 in it. That didn't include December, which, 224,694. And I apologize, I wanted to pass something out,
Yeah.
but didn't get to it. I'll have it for next meeting.
Okay.
So 224,694 is the balance at the end of November. If I take, we need, in order to vote at town meeting to authorize a purchase out of ambulance receipts, Julie could keep me honest, I think we need to have the fund at the end of April. The fund at town meeting has to have enough money to apportion. And so I think April, month end is where sort of the cutoff is, where we need the money to be able to have the town opine on paying for a new ambulance. So that being said, I projected December, January, February, March, and April. So 5 months at a replenishment of $9,348, which is the average of the 11 months in 13. That would get us $271,000 in the ambulance fund at the end of April, theoretically. If the new purchase of the ambulance is $250, that would leave roughly $20,000, only $20,000 to be infused into the operating budget for fiscal 15, whereas right now we have 77.5. And so if we decide to do this, we take a hit of $50K, but we get a $250,000 ambulance. And so that's sort of the way that the math's working right now, and I'll have to write all this up to have Julie check my math. But
So my question is, do you want to be as, is there any reason to leave anything more than 20,000, I mean, to take it down to zero?
there's no reason to have a fund, a
At all?
balance in the fund, other than.
Let me ask
the fund.
one question about that. Is 250 the maximum for this ambulance?
Yes.
Okay.
With all the
And
bells and whistles?
and 250 would be if we kept the second
Yeah.
ambulance.
David?
So, because we don't have the training time.
Right. But we couldn't take that into consideration anyway, going into town meeting. We'd have to have enough in this reserve going into town meeting.
Right.
Correct?
Yeah,
We can't anticipate, we don't know how much we get, we don't know when it can happen.
No,
and all
that's
that
why I
stuff.
think we
Okay.
have to
Yeah,
do it
okay.
with 250.
David?
Right.
It seems to me, although you don't want to count the May and June $9,300
Yeah.
towards the ambulance, you could count it toward the fiscal year.
I could.
So
No, you
instead
can't,
of the
because again, at
26.
that date, at town meeting, you
No,
need to have the money in
for 15.
there.
For 15.
You're voting at,
For
No,
15, you're voting
Same
15.
meeting.
He's talking about the
Oh,
77.5, instead of having it be 20, which the math suggests it could actually be 40,
No,
because you're gonna
again,
get.
same meeting, you're voting, you need
But,
to have the money there.
Okay,
As a revenue item. Yeah.
Well, you can't,
you can't apportion it if you don't have it. Is what the message.
When you vote the article for the budget, one of the places it comes from is the ambulance receipts reserved. You need to have the money in there
Right.
in order to appropriate it.
So the sum of the purchase of the ambulance and the amount that we infuse in the budget has to equal what the fund balance is at the end of April, is what you're saying.
I can't exceed it.
So in that
So it's
case,
not
it's
like
20 grand. And also, my math is, I don't know if we're gonna get
Needs to be there. You're not
$9,348 over the
estimating
next 5 months. Right. It could be more. I mean, some of these months,
Yeah,
there's
these-
13, 15,000, but some of
Yeah.
them are
This is what
6,700.
Coastal sends us, so that's the last 2 years.
So anyway, this is all based on averages. I mean, we
Yeah,
could make
okay.
an argument not to cut it that thin and actually make the 77.5 zero and
Yeah.
really give us some wiggle room, but then it would still take a $77,000 hit to the
Where would
operating.
the trade-in value go?
It'll go into free
2050?
cash.
It'll go into the
It'll
general
go into
fund and
free
get
cash
certified.
if we trade it in the following
No,
year.
because you wouldn't
Oh, no,
spend
into the
250,
reserve?
you'd pay 225, so your
Oh,
appropriation that
that's
you
right.
made,
It'll
you'd
go
have
into the
extra
reserve.
there.
Right.
Oh.
But I think we have to pretend it's 250 because there's a lot of decisions that need to be made. Margie's gonna advocate keeping the ambulance. It hinges on the house for it. There's a lot of stuff. You know, I know there's
Or
actually
weren't we going to be
Houghton.
making those decisions before town meeting?
Well, we should because there's a Houghton building article that I've seen as a placeholder for repairs.
Oh, no, fire it,
Oh,
fire
sorry,
it.
Whole fire-
And I assume
fire
that that's,
station article.
well, we'll see when they come in and
Is
talk
that-
about buildings.
Is that, who, is that to repair it to shore up the building?
Is
And
that-
is there a use for it?
Is that coming from you guys, the repair of the old fire station?
No,
Is that
it's
coming from
Harold.
Dan?
It's coming from Harold.
Oh, from Harold?
Yes.
I mean, not Dan, of course, not
Harold
Harold.
from Harold.
Yeah.
But again, I asked the selectmen last year to form, and I hate the subcommittee approach, but I asked you guys to form a old fire station space needs committee that I don't think ever got done, because I think we had this burning question on why would we spend 30 grand at the time on fixing a building that has no established use other than storage. So that's why we put the 8,000 in, sort of just to stop the leaking. And I think a year later, we have no better idea. Margie's the only one that actually has come up with a good idea to use it to house an old ambulance. And
Why would we keep the old ambulance?
Because we don't have, right now, we have, if our ambulance breaks down, we have nothing else,
Okay.
so.
But,
Let me
sorry.
finish.
No, I just think we're getting way off the budget topic.
Yeah.
We're gonna go through this when we go through capital planning anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Well, I think it's good to know from
revenue
this
situation, yeah.
revenue situation, to know what we want to, what we're thinking about, because that'll affect, $50,000 is a lot of money, the difference. So that, I think that's important for us to know. Whether she trades in the ambulance or not, you're right, does not affect anything else, but this piece does. So you're going to be you'll be talking to capital planning, I think, this next week?
Yeah, Monday.
Okay, Monday, okay, good. See how what their
And
approach
then,
is.
then would we all meet together, or is that?
No, they come and talk to us, and I can't remember the date. It's pretty, I think it might be the 18th of February that they're going to come in, once they've had a
Okay.
chance to meet with everybody, and then they can prioritize everything. And,
You're welcome to come.
I'm writing it down right now.
They're supposed to prioritize the needs of the town without consideration of how much, of how to pay for it, or how much things cost theoretically, right?
Yeah.
And so, the ambulance, unfortunately, the only thing that we can use ambulance receipts for is, well, I guess theoretically, we could take it all into the budget or use it what it was intended to do, which is only to pay for an ambulance. So you have, in my opinion, you have a very compelling case. So, even if they prioritize it lower, at least to me.
Well, that's the new ambulance you're talking about, not
Yeah.
keeping the old.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
no, I
not-
have.
yeah.
But I don't know if capital plan's gonna opine on whether we keep the old or not. I don't think that's in their purview.
Well,
There's
it
no
wouldn't be
capital,
as
it's not
far
an
as,
expense.
well, the fire building would be, the old fire station would be,
I don't know.
wouldn't it?
So if
let's,
capital planning's not gonna do it, then we should talk more this evening about the go or no-go of the use.
well, I think it might be beneficial, just take 1 or 2
Right.
minutes, because we are running quite late. It'd probably be helpful to your firefighter friends. Why you want to keep
Yeah,
the
so,
second.
so we have one ambulance, that's it. It breaks down, we have nothing else.
How many years have we had only one ambulance?
All years.
Forever.
We've never had two.
If it breaks down, you get a cover from Berlin or something, right? And that's happened before.
Well, yeah,
Well-
that's happened. We have, we've actually in the past been able to borrow ambulances from Boylston and or
Who
Clinton.
happen to have extra.
They have extra
Yeah.
for that reason. That's not always the case, but a significant, we last year had a oil leak in the engine. It was covered by warranty, but it took 13 days to get it. And so that's 13 days without an ambulance.
That's an old ambulance. No, the new one shouldn't have it.
No, because when they have to take the entire engine out. So
Oh,
it's
she's
just
saying there
simple
shouldn't have been
link.
it.
No, I'm
Yeah.
just saying, I
Shouldn't be a
would
leak.
see that.
Yeah, these are all difficult things, and I think, it's like insurance, and it's just depending on whether
Yeah.
the town,
Well,
the committee, and a variety
How
of
old
people
is this
feel that
ambulance?
that's where we want to
there's
spend
so
money.
many other things too that you need to think
Six.
about, right? So
How
Mr.
many miles
Farrell
is on this
takes,
thing? Do you know, the mileage?
Yeah, 45,000 miles, 46,000 miles.
That's it?
Well-
Not like the car is.
but when we talked about this, there's a lot of things to consider, right? Like Mr. Farrell takes the ambulance on fire inspections because he's half-half, and if he's got ambulance call when he's out somewhere inspecting fire, he needs to take the ambulance, right? He theoretically could take the old ambulance on on his fire calls, keep miles off the new ambulance. So there are some intangibles that, that
There's
we
a lot of
need to
things
consider. There's a
we can-
lot of good merits to it. It's just I'd
Yeah.
be curious as to, do we need to heat the old fire station?
Well, so I did talk to the inspector, I have an email that says that it does have to be climate controlled, but with a heater block and a heater in the patient compartment, we can get around that. So we're talking electrical bill versus,
New heating system.
yeah. So there are a few things that we can get away with, short term, and then talk about the potential to rehab.
So, Chief Metzer, you have the old fire station, old fire engine in the old fire station right now, right?
Yes.
If the ambulance
Well,
would
just to
unseat
clarify-
that, where would that go?
You have
I
the
mean,
muster thing.
Yes, it's the mustard truck that belongs to the
not
Firefighter
ours.
Association.
ours.
It's not owned by the fire department itself.
Where would that go if it got displaced?
Well, I'm not even sure it would need to be
Oh,
displaced.
is it enough-
Brownie
is it
Brownie
two
thought
bays?
that there was enough space. We would have to potentially get a storage unit for the snow equipment that's in there, but that's a storage unit that would just go outside and, relatively small.
So it's certainly use for a historical building that people have argued to keep that we haven't used for anything else other than storage, which is Bob's.
You're completely ignoring Mr. Sikansky.
I'm keeping my powder dry until the arguments count.
So, Margaret, I think what would bolster your argument to keep it is if you start putting together all the myriad added costs. So, the salvage value, that's obviously would not be coming to the town. To update, what's it gonna cost, this, heater, the annual bill, all that stuff.
Fixing the
I mean,
building,
if you
the
could make a
shed for the
cake,
equipment,
Yeah.
kind of mushroom.
I feel a lot better if you were gonna keep this. I would love to see this revenue neutral as opposed to a revenue suck.
No, it won't be though, because right off the bat,
Yeah.
it cost us $25,000 to keep the old ambulance, because
Right.
we would have got
Yep.
$25,000 to sell it.
So my biggest concern is then the town has a second ambulance, and then 8 years from now when we go get another one, what are we doing there? And whenever there's the potential, no one likes a takeaway.
Okay.
And so now we've grown.
Yeah.
We've gone there was a time period where this, obviously just historical, right? There was a time period where this town didn't even have an ambulance. We've done very well with one. So for you to bolster that argument, please gather a whole mess of data and present that. You come back to us.
It boils down to this, at the very least, it's gonna cost us $25,000 to keep it, because it's the lost salvage value. Is it worth $25,000 for the average of 3 times a year that we're gonna be without an ambulance? I mean, that's the kind of thing people are gonna wanna think about. And I'm not sure it's worth it.
And it's in
If it's available,
perpetuity, because
sometimes
you
it
will
hasn't
never
been
trade in an ambulance. You will always get rid of
Just
that one, which
rotate it.
will have
Yeah.
almost zero trade-in value, and rotate.
Once we go
So that
to
was
two, we'll
it.
never
Once
go
you
back
get
to
to-
Yeah, no, you won't.
And there are some merits, obviously, too, other than just having it in town. I mean, anytime we do.
Dual calls, stuff like
Right,
that,
dual
right?
calls, so we can start,
Well, that's,
we can charge for more. There's lots of times that we have enough staff to staff 2 ambulances and we have 3 patients. We can handle that, I started looking at those, I can't say for sure, I can say definitely last year we had at least 14 times that we could have done that. So,
But what I like to see is those
How much
14
did that
times would we have
dollarized?
gotten $1,000 a time, and then that 14 grand quickly pays for the 25, you know what I mean? That
Yeah.
kind of math, I think, is what Brad.
yeah,
Yes.
that would be a good exercise, because otherwise it's kind of an uphill battle.
yeah. I know, but
Yep.
I would feel uncomfortable.
You've got to
Yeah,
bring
no,
those
no.
proposals to us, even if they, you've got to bring those proposals to the town, even if you're not in favor of them.
Yeah.
You got to bring those proposals forward.
Any other questions from Margie at this point? We know we'll be seeing you again. It is February 18th at Capital Planning. We'll be
Okay.
here.
I would certainly show up.
Any other questions from the audience for Margie? Okay, thank you, please.
Thanks, man.
So, gentlemen, gotta find my fireman. Welcome. Are you just gonna talk, are you gonna be joining us?
I'm gonna move up a little closer,
Move up
but
a little
I'm more or
closer.
less observer.
We're gonna talk about, you gotta talk about fire ponds.
If you ask, if you ask.
Chief Manson?
Water holes or
No, fire ponds. Fire ponds, I think that's.
Water holes is where you go to have a beer.
Okay, good deal. So, are you coming, are you gonna, you're in the audience to your the support network, huh?
So that you can use now.
Yeah. Welcome, thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. Nice to talk to you again.
Oh, here we go. So, again, I know that some of my cohorts do not agree with this approach, but I would, doesn't matter. So what I've asked people to do, now we know you're the fire department, but if you could just generally just give us like an overview of, maybe a minute, to talk about what the fire department does that might be something that we don't necessarily think about, and if you can incorporate in that just generally what you see that might be different in 2015, in your 2015 budget than we've seen in 2014.
Okay, let me just start by, I did make some handouts for each of you. Please, can I take one and pass around just like back in school? And over the last year, I would say it's been a fairly typical year for the fire department. We have had a roster of 28 firefighters over the last year. We've lost 2, so we're now down to 26. So I'm looking to bring 2 new people in to get them trained to be effective firefighters. One important note is that, just out of interest, is that we have had a number of firefighters actually move out of town. So really, the people that the town depends on to protect them, only 44% of them actually live in town. The majority live in surrounding towns. As far as the fire calls, the emergency services that we provided over the last year, again, fairly typical. The first page of your handout is just a summary of the fire calls for the last 4 years, actually. In the last year, we responded to 164 emergency calls. The large majority of those were for automatic fire alarms, either false or unfounded. The second largest category was motor vehicle accidents, and that was brush fires. And an interesting thing, the place we respond to most often is the 495 area for motor vehicle accidents, vehicle fires, things of that nature. Over the last year, we have tried to do extensive training. We have been fortunate enough to, due to the Conservation Trust as well as the local developer, we've had 2 different houses that we want to use for training. We get to come inside, do search and rescue, that type of thing, fill the house up with smoke, kind of simulate real fire conditions. So that type of training has been very useful over the last year. We have done work on improving our fire ponds, the water supply in the town. We did work on our 2 most important ones, the Wheeler Road Fire Pond and the Berlin Road Fire Pond. Those are both improved to dredge the pond, that would increase the water volume, as well as install a dry hydrant, which makes it much easier and faster for the fire department to use the water there.
So those 2 are complete?
Correct. And hopefully in next year we'll be able to continue that. Just in terms of trying to improve the way the fire department does some things, I have tried to get the firefighters involved in that process. So I have set up a number of different, I call them working groups, where firefighters who are interested in a certain topic can get together and work on bringing new ideas into the fire department. So we have a training group whose responsibility is to come up with new and different training ideas, a training schedule, that type of thing. Another group is working on standard operating procedures, which are very important. A third group is working on pre-planning, so putting together a process to gather information about important structures or buildings in town and how the fire department might deal with emergency situations in those. So, and that's worked out very well. We have a lot of work to do, but at least we've kind of created a structure to get that work done. Obviously, those are kind of some of the highlights of the last year. Hopefully, next year is very similar again. Hopefully, nothing really changes much. Obviously, if we are able to proceed with the new fire apparatus purchase, that would be a new thing for next year. And we would have to integrate that into the department and the operations. like I said, continue with the fire pond improvements, continue with everything else we're doing, and hopefully continue on that way.
Can I just ask one question? I know we don't, again, it's premature to the discussion, but does your timing look like Margie's does when she wants to go out and buy an ambulance? It's 6 months to 9 months it takes that process?
Actually, it's probably a little longer, actually. It could
So
be
even if we
10
get approved for July 1st, we wouldn't see the apparatus until...
Well, actually, if it's an article at town meeting, it's effective the day.
Right, but there's a process, the process that takes like the
But he
same...
could start as soon as town meeting's over. It doesn't have to wait till July 1st.
How's Margie? Oh, I see.
Funds
The town
Funds
meeting...
are available.
Yes, yes, the funds are not, yes, but
We couldn't
you mean
award
just
the
with the
contract.
knowledge that
Right.
he is
No,
going,
no,
yes.
the funds, if it's an article, the funds are available the day after town meeting. It doesn't, if it's a budget issue, it waits till July 1st.
Oh,
But if
that's
it's an
true. It's just an article.
Margie,
to
If it's an
buy.
article, the funds are available.
Out to bid on a new ambulance the
Right.
day after town meeting.
Okay,
Right.
okay, good. Okay, thank you.
Good right away.
Historically, that, my recollection, it hadn't always been that way, but I see your point.
But
Depends
legally,
where the money comes from.
Yes.
If it's coming from free
Free
cash,
cash,
it's
yeah.
available. If it's coming from another article that has money, it's available. If it's being raised on the tax rate, it's not available.
Right.
Until
But it's a portion, and I think they can start the bidding process. They might not be able to buy it. They can start the,
Process.
because they know they're
The
for
money.
sure gonna have the money, right? And I think that lead, it just cuts 2 months out
The
of the lead
process,
time.
yeah.
May and June out of the lead time, right?
But it would still be a substantial amount of time before we actually see the apparatus.
something a year or so.
But that's good, I'm sorry, not to interrupt, but that's good for Margie's, like, your 6-month clock starts March, or May 7th, and not July 1st.
Correct.
So that might change the halves that we just did, but it's...
That's close, yeah.
Looks like.
Okay, well, that's good to know, thank you. Okay, so we'll do a little bit more detailed discussion of just going through line items on your budget. I'll just do an overview first. So the total budget requested for fiscal year 2015 for the fire department is $154,821 compared to $149,781 last year with a raise of 3.4%. The primary increase, all of the increase comes from in the wages category, which went from $100,536. There's now, we're asking $100,356 versus $95,286 last year. Am I somewhere down?
No, the
Repeat
budgets in the
that.
package are not adding right.
Yeah.
They're missing
I'm
some.
using
much
the right
was
one,
the-
right?
You are.
Yeah, okay,
What's the
so,
budget?
so the total budget is $154,821 for 2015 compared to $149,781 in 2014.
This is not work. Didn't work.
Okay. If you want, you can make a copy. You good? Okay. Okay, so, Chief Menser, we'll just go through each of the line items. Inspections, there's the first, the wages inspections, which is a stipend issue, I understand. I remember correctly from last year. It's a stipend in a minute.
The inspections account is used to, normally Lieutenant Farrell, our full-time firefighter EMT, does the fire inspections as used with the ambulance, as was mentioned earlier. This account is just to provide some money for a backup to him, another firefighter is appropriately trained to do the inspections. So he has some money set aside to pay some of the inspections while Lieutenant Farrell is on vacation, out for sick, that kind of thing. Unfortunately, one of the people who was our backup inspector was one of those two who left the department, so I'm in the process right now of trying to find another person. That's why year-to-date so far we haven't spent any money out of there, but that will be spending once I get a replacement.
Does that affect any of the, how does that affect you if you're not able to do the inspections that need to be done?
It's right now it's just a matter of just making sure that they just get scheduled when Lieutenant Farrell's
When Lieutenant Farrell's there, okay.
If it really came push to shove, we could get the inspection done. It's just a matter of convenience in a sense.
Okay. So then,
So that amount's staying the same
right,
for this year versus last.
as is the 5113, which is Lieutenant Farrell's shared wages.
Correct.
And again,
That would be the number set by Dawn and Julie.
yep.
That'd be the
That
same
might
number which Ryan just discussed with you.
Okay. And then clerical wages?
That's the fire chief's stipend, which is this constant $5,000.
That gets you a better description, really.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. And then finally firefighter wages, line 5115, 66,785 this year versus 61,715 this year, which is an increase of five. Yeah.
This is kind of a catch-all account. This is used for a lot of different things. It covers the call firefighters, call response pay, their training pay, any fire prevention activities. You know, I visit to schools in the fall during fire prevention month, that kind of thing. It does pay for the officers' stipends, not the chiefs, but the other officers. And it also pays for the permanent firefighters' overtime, his callbacks, his training time, and extra duty. So there are a lot of different things in there. The reason for the increase this year versus last year is two. One is, I think, probably as Maggie just said, our call volume, I think, is starting to stabilize, although there is still a slight trend upwards if you look over the last 5 years. So I counted for 3 additional calls at $250 apiece for a total of $750. The balance of the increase is due to changes in the training pay, primarily due to the new call firefighter collective bargaining agreement, which will be in effect in FY15, which raises the cap on the training hours per month from 6 hours to 8 hours. They're still paid at $10 an hour, but just additional hours that are payable. So there's also a change that for all firefighters for calls longer than 2 hours, the hourly rate was changed from $15.19 up to $17.50 to be comparable with what the ambulance pays. So that's another portion of the slight increase. So based on my estimation, that additional increase is due to those changes in the collective bargaining agreement affecting primarily the training pay. And those are set by the agreement.
Okay. So, does anybody have any questions on the wage lines? I mean, the only thing is that that's showing a decline, actually, again, of volume.
Well, although the trend over the last 5 years is still upward, although I agree it's probably, somewhat leveling off.
What did you say?
195 on the 4-year average.
That's what that line is, yeah. Yeah, so still showing that, and so, okay.
Yeah.
And then how does that dollar, what was that dollar fifth was?
It was 3 calls at $250 a piece, which is our average cost
Okay.
per call.
Okay, $750, okay. Comments on wages? Okay.
Well, just on call, I mean, this might not be the right spot, but Chief, I've been here a while, as many of us, and we've talked about, I mean, it's alarming the amount of calls that you make for these false or unfounded, right? And it's actually up in 13 is the highest year it's been over the past 4. And one of the things we've talked about, the idea of whether it's been embraced or not, or I don't think there's been consensus yet, but the idea of sort of this you get 3 calls and for this, these nuisance alarms, and then the 4th is going to cost you $250 because that's what it costs the town to go out 5 times, for every time to check your malfunctioning alarm, right?
Yes, we have discussed that other years, and it is something that I did look into to see what what arrangements the police had for that type of thing. It's a possibility, although if you were to look at the numbers, and I did make a breakdown for you, I can if you would like, but if you look at where those unmanned fire alarm calls came from, really, there's not a lot of repeat customers there. And at the worst, there might be somewhere where we go, one or two, if someone has one false alarm, and so, that happens. You might have a second. On the second, they realize that they have a problem, they bring the alarm company in and fix it. So we rarely go back 3 or more times to any one place. And really, all of those calls are spread out over a lot of different customers in a sense. There's not really a lot of cases where we have a large number of repeat alarms.
Is there any educational, I mean, I don't have a, well, I guess I have a fire, yeah.
You have an
I do.
automatic
I have an automatic one. Is there any educational, anything that you can communicate to people why this happens, or things that people should be doing besides changing their batteries? Or is this a different kind of alarm than that?
Your question assumes most of these calls are residential, is that correct?
There mix between residential as well as some of the commercial or businesses, plus the schools.
50/50?
Well, primarily private residential, since that's really
Okay.
the largest number of.
But at least you're monitoring it, and you would know if you have these, we've been here 5-6 times this year. It sounds like that's not the case.
No, I would say not, no.
Yeah, well then.
And we do try, if it's a residence, we do try to say, change batteries or take your smoke detectors down and, clean them out, get the dust out, get the bugs out, that kind of thing. We do try to educate them in that way.
But the
Public
schools are a
service
source
would-
of this too? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Public services, fire drills at the schools, or when you,
I'm
Where does that
public
fall?
service.
that cost, right,
Thing-
every time you go to a school, right, and do a fire drill?
No, because really only just Lieutenant Farrell attends those.
Okay.
And his, that would come out of his salary.
So there's no educating the masses that would be helpful, do you think, in cutting back on some of the false alarms?
I mean, we could certainly do like a short
PSA
article.
on,
Yeah.
Are the schools, you mentioned the schools, which, only 2 of them, really. So to have them mentioned means there
We
must
have
be a lot of
Emerson,
reading.
Sawyer, and Neshoba.
Yeah.
Right,
And we could even
Emerson,
have,
okay.
some false alarms from the school.
almost every year, pretty much.
Well, is it a mechanical issue, or is it someone being malicious, or,
It's, I would say there's
I don't
one
want to take a
predominant
test.
reason.
I have a test in 10 minutes I haven't studied for.
There's been some occasions where, someone for whatever reason has pulled a fire alarm.
Okay.
But, that's not.
But it's not mechanical stuff.
It's there have been some, mechanical problems that have,
Well, for $48 million budget, they can get the fire systems to work correctly. I mean, I'm
The
serious.
schools are much better than they used to be.
Okay.
Or they could pay the $250 fee on a nuisance. So you're saying the Mendoza line's at 2? Like, so these repeat offenders, basically after the second call, they fix their problem.
Pretty much, I'd say,
So we could set the fee at 2. Anything past 2?
But you're gonna get, people pay their taxes for the fire department, so
Yeah.
it gets to
Yeah,
be
but not to come out on.
pretty,
The thing that
I understand.
that's in the back of my mind is 25% of all the calls are these false alarms. There are people leaving their livelihoods to answer false alarms. 1 out of every 4 times that the firefighters respond, it's a false
No,
alarm.
not just-
And a lot of these people work for themselves, or they have a very tolerant and understanding employer who lets them leave.
Or
And,
volunteer.
for that to be a false alarm is,
It's the number one call instance of our whole fire department by far.
Are you charged?
Yeah, I don't know what the
you get
answer
rid of those,
is,
you can
but
cut the budget by 25%.
Yeah, so that's the question, how do you get rid of them, yeah?
You can cut at least 10% out of the budget if you eliminated the false alarms.
No, I agree. Do you have a crystal ball there that's going to tell you how to do that?
But Chief, on that point, when, you know, obviously when the
I
call
hadn't
goes
realized that
off,
till now.
Yeah, no, this is.
at that point, you don't know
We have no idea.
what the deal is, right?
You have to know.
And so so whoever, you know, responds, then they're on the clock, right? They're gonna get a stipend and all that, right? So.
Correct. We have to assume that it's.
Sure,
an
but
actual-
to Bob's point, I mean, I don't know what the answer is in terms of a fee for nuisance or when you put it in, but, I mean, that is frightening. 25%
I think
of
maybe
these calls.
publicizing this to the folks in town, because this seems to me like, if you know that 25% of your call volume is related to something that you shouldn't be needing to pay for, and if everybody could be more diligent as individual,
What about having people have a professional inspect their fire alarm system every year?
Percentage
And
of
charge
4
them.
years though, right?
It's the average.
No, I don't know what that's-
Still, it's even worse. That's.
but even Margie will go out on a call, I'm just gonna, tell me if I'm wrong about this, she'll go out on,
Unauthorized fires. I would charge everyone.
Yeah, but she doesn't have like a phantom broken leg.
no,
She doesn't go out on false alarms.
my point was, as soon as we decide this.
Fines or something.
Not that I'm trying to eliminate, I just want to, yeah. But Margie will go out on a call, and she'll get there with everybody, and they'll refuse to come in. And that happens,
It happens quite a bit, but we've also taken steps to prevent it. Like, we used to have an automatic dispatch if the airbags in the car had gone out at a motor vehicle accident. We've changed that. Because they're more sensitive now, we're not seeing as many injuries. So someone says they want an ambulance, obviously we get an ambulance, but we've
Yeah.
reduced that as not an automatic dispatch.
so you have no way of knowing when the
No,
alarm
right,
goes off.
yeah.
Do you,
And you have no way of knowing.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you provide proportionate response? And by that, I mean, I'm a scanner, I've listened to some of the calls as they come in through dispatch and they send out the tone. And sometimes it's fire alarm at X road, you know, and they'll provide, you know, either the owner smells smoke or the owner doesn't, right? I mean, do you send everybody all the time, no matter what? I'm not saying that that's not a bad practice, because you don't know, right? But is there any screening that gets done on the initial call when a person's actually calling 911 for the fire, that, hey, my fire detector's going off, but I don't smell any smoke, and, you know, I mean, then would you only send one engine? I mean, is there any kind of logic into your response? based
Well,
on
The first thing is, you know, when everyone would be toned, so anyone who was able to respond,
Oh, yeah.
you know, probably would start heading in the direction. As soon as we're able to determine that it's not a true emergency, you know, we still have to respond with someone, but we might cut back the response, you know, saying, you know, at least hold some of the engines in quarters, not have them actually respond.
Okay.
But anyone who responded
To the fire station anyway gets paid regardless of whether they hop on the truck or not, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's a tough thing.
It's a
to-
tough-
How many of the calls that you receive are automated versus a human being? Like, are you attached to these houses that have like an automatic system that goes right to, you know, is that part of this process, or is that separate companies? And
Well, basically, the type of calls we're talking about here, the automatic fire alarms, those are all ones that are re-notified automatically, either by, you know, usually a third-party company or something.
Okay,
It's not the homeowner
like
calling
ADT is
you.
calling you
Correct,
saying
yes.
somebody's alarm is going off.
Correct.
Are we tied into for those school calls and things like that? Are we directly tied into the schools? In that, if an alarm goes off at a school, is it somebody in the front office calling you saying, this is
No,
what's
it'd be
going
the
on?
same. It's
I guess the
a
key
monitoring company
is
would do it.
that these are all automatic.
Yes.
Okay, so there's no human contact?
That's a lot.
No, initially, no.
Yeah, it's a lot to think that there's not that many business in the schools, so that there are a lot of homeowners that have automatic, you know, have an ADP subscription or whatever, right?
So is there such a thing as yearly inspections for homeowners of their system?
Not that the town requires.
Obviously, everyone who's watching knows I don't have one. So I have to ask these questions. But I do have a very big dog.
The answer is you have a burglary alarm for sure, but you don't have a fire.
That's right, that's right.
There's nothing that the town requires.
No, but do these
I
companies
don't have
offer
to
that
buy
anyway?
this. I'm not really sure,
Okay.
what kind of arrangement a homeowner
It's
might
kind of out
have.
of his hands because it's not.
Well, let me
No, he
interject
can-
here. You should be, and we're telling, and the fire department does tell a homeowner to change their batteries twice a year.
But these are different, these are the kinds of.
No.
But
Your
it's an
home-
electrical system.
Your recent
Right.
installed battery, fire alarm systems in homes have a battery backup.
Right, but they're not tied directly into.
No. But the homeowner should at least minimally be looking at their own smoke detectors twice a year.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I understand that, but for some of this more automated stuff, I mean, you can't really tell when the last time was that the homeowner changed the batteries.
That's true.
But for some of these more automated systems, you know, does ADP offer the, we'll make sure once a year that it's operating correctly?
I'm sure they do. I mean,
And,
there's a
in cases like that, if they're tied right into the dispatch, can the town insist that you have an annual inspection, or else you're gonna get fined if there's a false
Well, it
alarm?
would be cheaper for us to even do it, like, we could save money if we had one person go out to each one of the 54 people every year and look at their system, as
Different
opposed
people
to
every
spending
year. Yeah, it's different
25% of our budget.
Yeah.
No, but what I'm saying is like, that's almost.
But you know what, then we're legally obligated.
I was gonna say, it's certainly a liability.
Yeah,
too.
Yes.
And the other aspect too is, going to individual homes, it still is, a man's home is his castle.
Right.
So he can say,
Yeah, I don't want you.
Right.
Right.
But I mean, not that we're being trivial on this, but like, to the points that have been raised, I mean, 25% of the calls you go on, if things were working properly, you wouldn't have had to have gone.
Correct.
And that is a pretty staggering amount.
I think an article to the paper, or
Did you know?
to these, that you could write to the new paper that's coming and to the Clinton item, because I think this is educational. I
No,
think
we're
that
certainly
this piece
investigating
of it,
options
yeah,
for public education.
yeah, public
That's
education.
a good idea.
Yeah, to get that out there.
I think a fine is in
Fine
place
is,
too.
and then you tell them that they'll be fined, yeah. Anything else on the wage line item? Okay, let's walk through the rest of them. Purchase of services, $5,200. I'm sorry, $5,200. Account 5,200 is,
5485.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, Brad, okay. And I know there's an increase and you have an explanation for it, but.
Just to start, as far as expenses go, what I'm asking for this year is pretty much the same as last year. I've been able to decrease some accounts to cover increases in other accounts.
That's true.
For purchase of services specifically, this is an account where we cover expenses. We have companies come in and perform testing or things for us. Some of the things we need to have done at the end of the year anyway is to, like the pumps on the fire engines need to get tested and certified. That expense we covered here. The ground ladders have to be tested and certified each year. For all of the self-contained breathing apparatus masks, we have to do a fit test on each firefighter to his mask, make sure that the mask fits properly. We also have to have, each mask has to be tested to make sure the correct amount of air flows through the regulator properly. We have to have the air compressor that we use to fill the breathing air tanks with to test the air quality to make sure that that's good air quality. Physical exams for new firefighters, as well as cover our share of the iron responding software application that both ambulance and fire department use. So those are the existing expenses that have been covered in other years and carrying forward in this year. The increase that I'm asking for is an increase of $960 to cover the cost of 2 wireless cards that we would like to add in to equipment that we will be purchasing using existing money. Okay. When we purchased the new self-contained breathing apparatus and the turnout gear with the town meeting article from the past, Part of that was, one of the reasons why we went with the reading apparatus manufacturer was that they had a good product in the reading apparatus itself, but they also were able to offer us the ability to create a system where we could better track who was on the fire ground. Accountability is a very important concern or at an emergency scene, to know who's actually there. So
Like attendance.
An attendance list, yeah. So we know who might be there and who to go looking for. So this manufacturer has a system that's built into the reading apparatus that will kind of register the apparatus with a software application running on a small laptop.
So basically creating a dashboard so that you can
Correct.
look at a laptop and see who's in the structure, who they are, how much air they have left. all that.
Exactly, yes.
Wow.
And so this is all covered by existing money from that article. What we'd like to do would be able to kind of take that one step further, and now we have the small computer, or we'll have that small computer on the fire apparatus, be able to now use that for additional useful purposes, especially being able to create a communication link back to the I always call it IMC, although the name of the software has changed, Perform from TriTech. But that's the main software application that fire, police, and ambulance use for record keeping and things like that. But if we can create this communication link back into that system, now while we're on scene, we can get all sorts of important information about where we're at, the building or the structure, where we're at, what kind of hazards are there, where the utilities are located, that kind of thing. And
Floor plans.
Photos of what the building might look like. As well as just being able to go to, if we're at a hazmat incident, we could go to the Chemtruck website and get information about the chemicals that we're dealing with and things like that. So this additional amount is to add in the wireless cards, 2 of them, to be able to create this communication link on this existing equipment back to our data source at the Public Safety Center.
Now, in your write-up, you said it was for engines 1 and 2,
Correct.
and the choice for those 2 engines is because, well, you wouldn't do 5, because you're hoping that doesn't exist, but
Engines 1 and 2 are the 2 engines will be the primary response to most of our calls.
and even with the new apparatus, because the new apparatus would not be the primary apparatus.
It would be, although if we didn't have new equipment on the new apparatus, then the equipment on engine 1 would get transferred over.
But this is, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
This sounds to me like it's very useful for, and I hate to use your own statistics against, to make an argument against, but this concept seems to be very tied into structural fires. And, it's interesting as you look at your call volume, the vast minority of the things that you do is actually for fires, right? I mean, structural fire, 2% of your calls, right? And even if you wanted to add in hazardous materials, 3%. I mean, so you're talking, if you want to even say all your mutual aid is based on structural fires, then you add in another 1%, right? So the things, not to say this isn't a useful thing or that it's a human life and you can't put a value on a human life, I get all that, but it's interesting to note that the sort of the events, if the 4-year history has a telling future tone to it, the events in which this would be used is like 5 to 6% of the call volume you have every year.
Well, that's true, although, I mean, once you have it, you can kind of expand it into many different areas. I mean, another possible use might be brush fires, which is a large percentage. We could, easily get access to topographical maps, so we could be able to better see, where in the woods we're going, that type of thing. At a motor vehicle accident, we possibly could be able to get into some of the databases which tell you in new vehicles, where the battery is located, or what type of airbags were in the car, where they're located, so you can get information about hazards, even in a motor vehicle accident, that type of thing. There's, is a lot, structure fires and pre-planned information is kind of the most obvious, but there's a lot of different ways in which we could utilize this at a lot of different types of calls.
You know, it sounds like it's, you know, a step forward, certainly, from what we've been able to do. And, I mean, from my standpoint, it seems like money well spent, but
Yeah,
I'm
it's not a
interested
lot
in
of
hearing,
money.
it's not a lot of money, and it just, it
$900.
brings us into $960, I think, total, right?
Correct.
Yeah, for both cards for the
Correct.
year. And we have, it's like we have the equipment to take us part way, and this takes us the whole way.
Correct.
That's what,
And this was voted in, the software was something the town voted to
Yes.
pay for back in the day at some point.
Yes.
Okay, and then do we pay to kind of, so we every year,
Upgrade?
yeah, kind of upgrade or get new maps and new information, like, it sounds like there's a ton of information in this thing, but it's only for certain, like, for the fire department, or for the, or can anybody tap into it? In other words, could you have your smartphone and have a user that's tapping into that same information? Or is it fire specific, fire safety?
I think that's it would probably be pretty much fire specific.
Okay. Forgive me, because I don't remember this.
And Dave's kind of one of our technical experts, so if he feels differently, he can.
It's an awesome
chime in.
amount of information.
Does the police department also tie into that? Do they have the capability
I
now?
believe they would have the capability. I'm not sure to what extent they might use it.
probably the automobile accidents are, and you would have the same capability?
Well, yeah, with, there's three different sides, EMS, fire, police, for the software. The police only have the police package loaded onto their laptops. The mobile license is for the TriTech software. In the fire truck, we load the fire side, and that would give us access to those pre-plans, topographical maps, even just accessing Google Maps, things like that.
Wouldn't the police have basically the same requirements for information?
In terms of data security?
No, in terms of, don't they need to know what a house structure looks like?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
So the ambulance has air cards, the police department has air cards, so essentially it's just getting fire to air cards.
Okay, well that helps too. Parity as we speak.
We're just trying to catch up.
Okay. Any other discussion about the purchase of services line item? And where are we on expenditures on that?
There has been a large amount of money spent so far this year, just because of the way in which we typically schedule a lot of these tests and certifications with the companies. It just typically seems to be done in the springtime.
Actual in 2013 was just $2,200. And that's the only really data we have on purchases. I don't know where it was before maintained. It was budgeted in 2013 for $31.65 and spent $21.47. Approved for $45.25 in 2013. 2014 we haven't spent anything, and then an increase. So I don't know.
As I said, for FY14, a lot of this money will be spent in the spring when these things.
Well, let's keep our eye on it,
typically-
because if it again doesn't come, that we're using the money, then we'll probably have to reduce the budget then.
I think one of the factors for the previous year, FY13, was that when we bought the new breathing apparatus, we didn't have, the fit testing came as
A
part of that.
lot of the testing wasn't part of it.
Yes.
Wasn't part of it.
But now that the apparatus are a year old, we're not doing that as any point.
Any other questions on purchase of services? Electric is just for, as I understand it, is just for small water pumps and not for lights, right?
No, not at all. This just pays for electricity to run the the electric pump at Emerson School, which the town put in as a convenient fuel site for us to fuel up the trucks after fire, that kind of thing, as well as one of the cistern on the Rocky Dundee Road.
So none of the other water ponds have electric pumps, or will?
The fire ponds don't. There are other cisterns in town that have electric pumps. Although the cost of those is not paid by the fire department. Don't ask me who pays for them.
You know anything about that? You know anything about that?
Well, there is, maybe we pay for certain street lights and things like that.
It might be bundled in, that kind of thing. I'm
Because
not really
electrical
sure.
comes
Yeah.
off of that, okay. Okay, probably not. Okay.
So how do you get water out of a fire or water hole? Do you bring a generator, or does the pump on the truck actually suck it out of the water hole?
At at any...
Yeah. The one on
Well,
Water Road.
let's talk about the new ones. The new ones have the pipe, the
No, but
stands, the dry.
pipe, you don't just open it up and the water
No,
comes
we
out of the
would-
pipe. They
It's
gotta-
not a miracle.
Right, no, but I'm just wondering how to...
No, I'm just trying to differentiate the two, because there's
Yeah,
ones
but-
with dry, and then there's ones.
In that case, it's really the same concept. It's just the amount of connections we have to make. For the fire ponds that do the dry hydrants, such as Wheeler Road or Berlin Road, we would connect up the pumper truck with a large suction hose to the dry hydrant, and then using the fire pump on the apparatus, we would create a vacuum in that to draw water into the fire truck itself. If there's no dry hydrant, it's really the same concept. We just
Stick it in
maybe
the
have to add in more hose and put in a strainer on the end, and that goes directly into the water.
Okay.
Repairs.
Repairs, thank you. We focused here. Okay, so that was $5,000, is budgeted in 2014, $5,650. This year, actual in 2013 was $4,800. Repairs to date have been about $1,000. So the question, I guess, is it's a small increase, but there's an increase, and is this everything you're taking into account here, without the purchase of a new engine?
In the repairs, I'm not taking into account the purchase of a new engine. Even if we were to, if that was approved, as you said before, it would be 10 months or longer before that might actually arrive on the door. So we would still have to maintain the other apparatus during that time, even engine 5 that would be replacing. And there are some known repairs that engine 5 will need during the year. Repairs have always been one of our biggest challenges in a sense. We always seem to have more repairs than we have money to do. I was able to save some money in some other areas, so I tried to use some of that to augment the repair account a little bit, just to try to help out with some of the things that we know we have coming up.
Comments? Okay. Then we are going on to training, which is level funded from last year, which had been increased to $1,630.
Correct, and the increase last year was that in FY14 we had to, well, we will have to do first responder refresher training as well as CPR refresher training, which doesn't happen every year, but in FY14 both seem to come at the same time. So that won't happen in FY15, but rather than decrease the training account by that corresponding amount, I would like to keep it the same so we could try to do some new things with trainings, which certainly the top on the list would be to try to get the firefighters to be able to go to and use the burn facility that Worcester Fire Department has, and which they make available to other departments. Unfortunately, it's at a cost, so the saving on not having to do the first responder CPR training next year, I'd like to be able to try to put towards some, like real
Hands-on.
fire-based training.
Is that some of the ideas that have come out of this group that you put
Yes.
together? So I think that's a great idea to bring in, your firefighters to planning some of the things that, the training.
There's the ones
certainly.
who directly benefit from it, so should, have a say in what happens.
So this line item is for your external costs to provide the training. Nobody in the fire department gets any of this.
Oh, no, it's not for training, wages, or anything like that.
Okay.
No. It's all external training. In addition to the training that we would get at no cost at the fire academy or at the fire departments. This is what we have to pay for. And a large part of this is training costs, like for new people that we need to bring in. As I said, we're down to, I hope to bring in two, they'll need training, textbooks.
Well, you hope to get them in 2014, maybe.
How do you get to 26 is the right number?
28.
The 28 is where we have been. I guess really just because based on call volume and the types of calls we've had, with 28 on the squad, it seems to be that for the most part we're able to adequately handle, those calls. I mean, daytime coverage is always a problem, will always continue to be a problem, and we would rely more on mutual aid during the day. But, that number of firefighters seems to work out well, just based on...
But with the drift toward more firefighters living outside of town, how does that affect the number of firefighters we need?
I don't know if it would really affect the number that we need. It would affect our response time, things like that, obviously. I would love to add more firefighters that live in town.
No, that's, I'm not contesting you on that. I mean, I think that decrease is somewhat inevitable, given all the things that are going on. And it's probably a marker of the increased professionalism of the fire department. So I'm not criticizing it at all. I'm just trying to understand what it means. And again, why the number 28 and not 26 and not 30. But basically, it's just historically it's worked out.
Yes, I mean, it's not, there's no secret formula we can plug the numbers in and we get 28 out of that. It would be nice if it was.
If you had 28 and then you had 2 people volunteer that lived in town, you'd have no problem going to 30, is what you're saying too.
Probably not, no.
Okay.
I mean, so the in-town people would kind of be worth it for be able to have their services.
So I guess I asked a different way, have you been turning interested parties down? And once you get to the 28, you become more selective. So I guess to Bob's point, then 28 does become this magic number that is just a comfort level.
I do have, in a sense, a waiting list of people who live outside of town. And that's what I'll be using to fill these positions.
Regardless of the number, though, given the fact that there seems to be a higher percentage going outside the town, it makes a case for keeping the number on the higher side, not necessarily going down, because if they're outside of town, if they're farther away, that it's gonna, depend upon who decides to respond in, right? You have a larger pool of applicants, so as to say, yeah, I'm available, given my work schedule today, I can go, right? Is that a fair assumption?
That's fair, I guess.
If I could add in here, and Chief and I have not conferred on this, but this is a little bit of history. I've looked around at other departments in the area. It's sort of a unofficial sort of thing that in an incident, if you want X number of firefighters to arrive and respond, it appears, and there's nothing scientific, nothing official about this, that if you want 10, you need 28. If you want 20, there are departments around here that have a list of 50 firefighters.
Wow.
But they're not all responding all the time. Some of them work different shifts and things like that. But it's sort of a this is a non-scientific.
It's anecdotal.
But
How many, what's the minimum you need to respond to a call at a house?
15 would be nice for a start.
No. How many people on the truck or at the site? What's the minimum you need?
15.
15 people?
Yep.
For an actual search fire?
If there's an actual fire.
Okay.
That's to begin with.
Okay, no, that's the minimum, that's what I asked for, okay. And a car fire out on 495?
Probably one crew, so, 4 or 5.
Okay, thank you.
And typically, how many, with us being close proximity to other towns, how often call to other towns that respond as well? I'm thinking where those numbers might come from, or is that just Bolton?
How many times does Bolton ask other towns for mutually?
Well, if a call goes out, are other towns getting it and then also coming in, going, to your point, saying like, oh, wait, they're,
No, not until I call.
Okay, thank you.
We are looking at setting up some automatic response agreements with like Lancaster
Right.
for a call
Okay.
at Neshoba,
Got it.
as well as like with Stowe, to perhaps, provide a tanker for a structure fire, that kind of thing. Those aren't in place, but we are investigating them.
Nice.
Okay. We just supplies yet? Yeah. Keeping on top. Supplies.
Yep.
Supplies is level funded. That's kind of another catch-all category, probably very similar to the ambulance. Office supplies, batteries, filters, fire safety materials is one of the big expenses. Rehab water, foam, equipment, firefighting equipment, tools, that kind of thing.
Sorry.
Supplies for dealing with some of the hazmat calls, as well as the different standards that we need to purchase for the fire prevention laws and regulations, that kind of thing.
And you're running about that, so that looks, that's been that's a good item. Then the gasoline, which is just $50 for generators, et cetera.
Generators, chainsaws, portable pump.
It's already overspent, but I'm not sure you can find places for that.
Yes, yeah, I wouldn't think it would be overspent by much more than that at the end of the year.
And then diesel, it's 4,000, which is what you have also in ambulance. Given that everything's about running the same.
Just put the tank.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So that sounds good. Automotive supplies. Anything that's unusual in that? It's overspent too. I don't know if that's.
It is.
How's that automotive versus, that's rather than repairs?
Automotive, the automotive and repairs account kind of blend together in a sense. They're both for apparatus maintenance and repairs, as well as equipment maintenance and repairs. And sometimes it's not a clear definition. It's probably something that I could work with Julie to try to better define those two accounts.
Is there even a need to have two accounts?
I'm sure they requested it at some point.
Yeah, no, I'm just wondering, is there a need?
I think that...
It helps you?
Yes.
Okay.
It would be nice to be able to kind of split off the apparatus expenses versus other equipment, since the apparatus is the largest one. But this is somewhat overspent just because we have had some more repair type charges put in here. Engine 4 had a water pump replaced, as well as some parts for the roll-up window and one of the doors.
And Chief, assuming it's a yes on the new fire truck, would you also be buying this DEF fluid?
You would, yes.
Another 1,000? Is it going to cost you 1,000? Your truck is bigger than an ambulance, bigger than a bread box. I don't know if that
It
matters.
doesn't move as much.
Oh.
It'd be fewer hours. Although, yes, it wouldn't be used as much as the ambulance. It would be probably one of the primary vehicles used in the fire department.
So $1,000 would probably be what you're looking at too?
I really don't know. I would have to research that, but that probably would be a good rough number.
Good point. Okay, uniforms. That is decreasing.
Yes, and this line item was increased somewhat last year to cover a lot of the expenses, or some of the expenses for the Class B or station uniforms that we provide to the firefighters per the call firefighter collective bargaining agreement. All that's been taken care of, so that additional expense for uniforms pretty much has been eliminated. So what's covered in here really is basically, in a sense, 2 sets of turnout gear, the coat, pants, helmet, gloves, boots, that kind of thing, for either new firefighters who are added in or for equipment that's damaged and needs to be replaced, that type of thing. As well as a uniform allowance for the full-time firefighter EMT, the fire department's portion of that anyways, and then some amount for if some of the Class B uniforms gets damaged, just some money to replace whatever might be necessary.
Okay. Any comments about uniforms? Okay, and dues and memberships are $650, which is about where they've been running actual for years.
I think one of the memberships increased by $15, but not to worry about that right now.
And just going back to uniforms,
sure.
Chief, you've got a game plan on the turnout gear, on the useful life, on the whole fleet, and where what needs to be replaced or added on for an ongoing basis?
Yes, man, I think it'll be a number of years before we have to start really dealing with the replacement.
And that's a union-driven thing, isn't it? Pretty much?
Well, for the uniform goes.
No, I'm talking about the turnout gear.
Yes.
So this...
We have to provide each firefighter with adequate turnout gear for the contract, yes.
All right, so the $6,800 cost for this given year, you said 2 turnout gear with the expectation that those 2 new firefighters will be coming on.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I haven't gotten to a point yet where I've started to think about to start replacing some of the new turnout gear we just bought last year.
Do they have a life? I mean, what's the life, would you say, for turnout gear?
10 years.
10 years.
Are they specific to the person, so if the person leaves, they're not able to be used?
They're sized to each individual. So if we were to hire a new person, that took a size 32 jacket or whatever, that could be transferred to the new person. But unfortunately, not everybody is the same size. So, sometimes we need to add or buy new equipment even though we have something, in the closet, just because what we have doesn't fit the new person.
So that's taking up the room from our museum lots.
That could be a new requirement.
Discrimination.
Where's size 32?
Move to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier philosophy.
Is the useful life of them based on them being worn all the time? So, for example, if you had one in the closet that hasn't been worn for 3 years, it happens to fit me.
No, that's an absolute, irregardless of amount of use.
Okay, it's a time, it's a year, no matter what. No, I was being self-deprecating.
Firefighter. Every boy wants.
I mean, as soon as it's manufactured, the fire protection quality of the fabric starts to degrade, so even if it's just sitting in the closet.
Okay. Water holes, or fire ponds, or whatever we call this.
One of the things that is included in the package was just the maintenance plan that you had suggested that we come to talk to you about. And as Jack Holbrook has been very instrumental in getting the work we've done so far done, working with the Bolton Conservation as well as the state to get the necessary permissions and permits, as well as working with the contractor themselves.
And
so,
homeowners.
So we've kind of pulled together kind of a long-term plan of the types of improvements that we would like to do. We've put the different water supplies that we would like to improve into 3 priorities. So our first focus will be on the priority 1 group. And then as we get those, then we kind of move on to the priority 2 and finally to the 3s. With the money that we're asking for, the $20,000, the goal for FY15 would be to be able to do similar type maintenance we've done before to the Town Hall Fire Pond, as well as the Century Mill Road Brook area, where the Town Hall Fire Pond will be in the 12,000 range and the Century Mill Road in the 8,000 range.
Was that decision based on intra-prioritization in this priority 1 bucket? Well, I mean, obviously you have 20,000 and the 12 and the 8 add exactly to 20, but did you pick that because it was sort of a 2-for-1 over Pond Park, which would have been just 1 with the same amount? I mean, are there...
One of the reasons picking the Town Hall Fire Pond over Pond Park, well, actually 2 reasons. One, Town Hall Fire Pond, we continued to observe it all year long, and it held its water supply. There was always water there. Pond Park, not to say that we shouldn't do it, but it doesn't give the town a year-round supply. And there's 2 things, so you might say, well, why do it? But the point is, we like to be within 1,000 to 1,500 feet of the buildings when we can, to provide the optimum amount of flow. So during the wintertime, Pond Park is historically has water in it. It seems to lose its water about August to October.
Where's Pond Park?
The pond opposite the Houghton Building.
At Mechanic Street.
Okay, and the Town Hall Fire Pond then?
Across the street. You can't see it. You'll never notice it.
Oh, okay.
When you drive up, you're going to Bond Hill. Anybody going east, there's a little red marker, and that's our access to it.
Oh, okay.
So it's right on the curve.
Yes.
All right, now I know where it is.
So it doesn't require nearly the work that Berlin Road.
No.
You don't have to dredge the stuff and take it off-site?
Well, there will be dredging.
But will you have to take it off-site like you?
We'll have to take it off-site, but there won't be as much dredging. The Berlin Road was a sort of an extraordinary project, and there are a couple more that are in the queue that might qualify as extraordinary projects, but we're hoping between the breakdown may not be 12 and 8, it may be 14 and 6, it might be 16 and 4, but
Yeah.
we're hoping the primary is the Town Hall Fire Pond. If it's going to take 20,000, that's life.
Yeah.
But we're hoping to be able to, projection right now is to split and get 2 for 1.
But you start 1 and complete 1 before you start 2,
Absolutely.
right? Okay.
Absolutely.
So,
On the Berlin Road one, if the culvert there gets fixed, is that going to affect your ability to draw
No.
water there? No.
No.
Okay.
No. We had the pipe put in such a fashion that it's away from the culvert.
Okay.
And
Well, the water level would presumably drop too if the culvert were fixed?
No.
No? Okay,
No.
good.
The beaver downstream have covered that for us
and at no cost?
at no cost, yeah.
And Jack, you were in earlier asking for additional money because of those
Yes.
cost overruns.
Yeah.
So given that and the data that you've been able to glean from these recent completed projects, these new proposed, are these updated figures with
Are they
that?
cast in stone?
No, I'm not, I would never assume that could happen.
Okay,
But yes, given the numbers where we saw it from,
Based on experience, worst
a
case.
little bit of an
and-
update.
Worst case and not such a worst case. Where,
Yeah, I understand that once you get in here, it's, you can open up a can of worms, but just
Yeah.
from an update from numbers that we had from a couple years ago, that's
I think as we do each water hole, we kind of recalibrate our projections going forward on numbers.
Great.
based on
It's, for me, it's been a vast education because, 3 or 4 years ago, I'd say, oh, we'll just go in and.
Yeah.
It's a lot more difficult than what I projected.
So my question is, that if you look at this list, so just in your priority one, we're looking, so that's 2015, 16, 17, maybe out to 2019. Before, and then you go on to these others, you're going, it's going to be several years, decade.
I won't be administering the license.
I know that. Well, you may be, but and I won't be here asking the questions. But then you'll be starting all over again.
Yeah.
So
More than likely, yes.
yeah. So but are you okay in waiting this many years to get priority 3 done? It's going to be years. I mean,
What's the alternative, that we do an article for 200 grand for?
I just want to know that the
That certainly would help things.
they talked about an article last year.
How many
Just
can you
remember
count?
that we were doing nothing up until a couple of years ago.
Great, and we had so it probably didn't have to do with the water hole, but if
So we are addressing it, and we're addressing it methodically.
No, it's a question I'm not asking, I'm just asking from the standpoint of, from the fire department standpoint, that you're looking many, many years out. If I were on Norris Road, maybe.
Which I am.
You are.
Which I am, yes.
I don't see Von Hill on here, but anyway, that maybe
That's out of
might
their
be more
territory.
concerned. They don't even worry about that.
Since you bring up Nurse Road happens to be one that is in relatively good shape.
Yes.
That's why it's on priority 3.
Right.
And is there a maintenance plan for anything? Any of these that gets done, say, this year?
Yeah.
Going down the road so that it's not as expensive the next time you have to come and do it? Providing, increases in cost.
Because you have that under your maintenance
Ratio,
goals.
anyway.
I mean, we do yearly maintenance, just make sure that the pipes don't clog up with, silt or whatever. I mean, there's really not much we can do to prevent the natural
Erosion and growth and,
that happens in the ponds, just from the leaves falling in and whatever gets washed in, from the brook, whatever that's.
When we build the dry hydrants, we have them about 2 feet off the ground, so that allows for 2 feet of accumulation before the pipe is affected, and we hope that would take a considerable amount
And,
of time.
there's nothing much that they could do without a permit from the Conservation Commission, because
And they've been very
Yeah,
proactive
but for example, you couldn't back flush these pipes, because then you're creating silt and debris and all this other stuff into the waterway, and that's illegal.
But prior to this project, how many years went by with nothing, or just
Many.
just throwing the draft into anything that held water, right? So
That's not the way to. Well, still I don't have the question answered, but David,
Yeah, how many times in the last 12 months have you used a water hole to fight a fire?
probably none.
I really have trouble with this whole program.
well, but your Berlin was just done. Across the street.
I didn't ask for that.
Well, to be fair then, for the past 4 years, since you gave us call volume data for the past 4 years, can you answer that question? How many fire ponds?
My
in the
next
past
question was
4
going to be
years?
the last 5 years, but
Yes, certainly, and the thing is,
but certainly means you have done it sometime in the last 5 years.
yes.
And how often? Is it a once a year kind of vacation on average?
Well, they refill the tank every time from the pond out here.
Yeah, but the thing is that, okay, the Hudson Road fire, which is now, I believe, 4 years ago, is that correct?
There was.
Yeah, we used the fire pond on
Century Mill.
Century Mill.
But that wasn't successful, as I understand it.
They had to
Beg
do
your
with
pardon?
equipment. Well,
I thought there was an equipment malfunction and you didn't get anything out of it. Did I?
No, not
Maybe I
at
misread.
that location. We drafted, we did draft, I was in Canada, so I can't speak to it. We got water out of the Century Mill pond, didn't we?
Yes.
Yes, we did.
So you did use a water hole to fight the Hudson
Absolutely, yes.
fire?
That's right.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Still, with structural fires being
So few,
2%
yeah.
of your, and maybe every other year using one of these, is it really a good use of town money of $20,000 a year to have these in tip-top shape? I doubt it. It's a value judgment.
Well, if they're only in tip-top shape the year that it's done. After that, they degrade for the next 20 years until you get to the cycling.
Yeah,
Well,
we don't have town
That seems to be
water.
more of an argument not to do it.
I understand, I sort of understand where you're coming from, but to say that we're just gonna fight the fire with tank trucks.
Well, that's not necessarily true. I mean, some of the fire holes will still work as fire holes.
Yeah, but you don't know which ones until you go to use them and they fail.
Yeah, and the other thing,
But the probabilities on all that, that a house is going to burn down because...
probability, if you're gonna go on
Yes.
probability, we'll sell all the fire engines.
Right.
And the thing with the dry hydrant is, that speeds up the length of time it takes to get water to the sink.
Especially this time of year.
Yes.
I mean, I see fire trucks going out quite a bit, apparently not for structural fires, but the only, I suppose we could use these for wildfire fires.
Absolutely.
usually. But still, I just don't think it's a very good, it's kind of a subjective judgment, but I just don't think it's a very good use of town money because they're so infrequently
Well,
used.
You could argue the same thing about the culverts.
Together, huh?
Well, no, the culverts, eventually, the car's gonna...
Well, eventually, someone's house is gonna burn down, Dave.
But-
Now,
but-
granted, that someone may not be on the finance committee the year it happens.
Okay,
What's the
that's a
liability,
much lower probability than the culvert.
What's the liability?
But there's
to the town if you-
no danger to people with a culvert
Well, sure there
backing
is.
up. Where?
The car goes over it and the thing collapses.
I think there's a low probability, because you'll see the puddle of water in front of you.
Liability, even if we didn't do it.
So I
We
just...
didn't have any fire
Just worst hypothetical situation you could imagine, right? There's no mutual aid because there's fires in neighboring towns. We have a bad fire, you go, you pull up, you need to replenish the water, you can't. And there's an argument's made that the house burns down because, it wouldn't have ordinarily burnt to the ground if you had access to the water that you needed at the time from X fire hole that had been maintained. Okay, very total hypothetical. Is there liability to the town? Is there precedent where a homeowner sued the town for not having adequate supply?
I would say that in the nation, there definitely has been precedents that, towns have been sued for not supplying adequate fire protection in specific cases. Now, I'm certainly no lawyer, but I would be very concerned from the town's point of view about the liability.
And I think your homeowner's insurance would be different if because I know that it wasn't in this town, but when I moved to Pound Ridge in New York, they had no fire hydrants either, and our insurance...
The fire ponds have no effect on...
Insurance rates?
They do not.
Well, but then it's almost like, you don't have any water then. Because I know I paid differently, now that was New York maybe, but I paid differently because we did not have fire hydrants.
And you pay different in Bolton because you don't have...
Yes, but it wouldn't be any less whether we had a working or a non-working fire pond, is what you're saying.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
I mean, there are a lot of other aspects that go into that whole calculation.
Well, yeah,
And,
water,
the fire
necessity, I would
company-
think, yeah. David?
First of all, I think that the standard fire form is if you're more than 1,500 feet from a hydrant, which you always are in Bolton.
Yeah.
You pay more. If you're less than 1,500 feet from a fire hydrant, you pay less.
Yeah, there's a rating also, a total rating, the town of Acton, if you've got permanent firefighters, if you've got a fire alarm system, if you've got a hydrant system, those all come into play. So,
Okay.
The point I wanted to make, though, I think the threat to life on not having a fire pond is much smaller because this is something that comes late in the fire, so to speak. In other
Not
words,
necessarily.
you your immediate response with the tanker truck and so forth, and by the time you're sending someone off to get stuff from the fire pond, it's usually a question of saving the structure rather than saving a life.
All right, so in
Well,
other words,
that's
so
it,
given the amount of water that you guys have presently on your trucks, plus or minus a new truck, whatever, who cares? So, given the present water that you have, all in, how fast are you gonna go through that water?
7 minutes. You're flowing 1,000 gallons a minute.
And
7
how
minutes.
many times have you had to call for backup from another town that were denied because they were busy?
They were denied, I don't remember any cases of that.
And how quickly do you get to the fire pond water? I mean, if you're done in 7 minutes with what's in the tanker, there's probably this hiatus under the very best of circumstances.
Probably, the things would be, they'd be happening simultaneously. So in other words, you're doing the attack on the fire, and you're, you know, the thing we hope for is, we lay out the hose to the pond, we hook it up, and this did happen once. A fella single-handedly hooked up the pumper, and he calls and he said, "I'm ready to deliver water," and they said, "It's okay, we have the fire out." So, you know,
Yeah, it's clearly a well-coordinated attack, Jack. I mean, I wanted the worst-case scenario. I mean, knowing that you have all these tankers, you're gonna go through it quick if need be.
yeah.
So, all right.
Had the pond adjacent to 48 Hudson Road been in better shape, I feel it would have been a better outcome. Again, I was in Canada, so I'm only a Monday morning quarterback. But I think,
Easier,
yeah,
yeah, the quarterback.
So, I mean, I feel as fire chief that the duty of the fire department is to protect life and property in the town of Bolton. And no matter what we do, the water supply is always going to be an issue, something, a problem we have to deal with. I would hate for the town to make that problem worse by not maintaining or improving the fire ponds, or our firefighting water.
So I think I'm thinking that my question, I think, has been answered. It is many years out, but a lot of these ponds that are on the later are usable,
Correct.
are usable now, and that this.
Okay, let me
just
go
let's
ahead,
finish.
go ahead.
So, and in getting to the Town Hall Fire Pond and Century Mill next year, that we're able to address two areas where there's two ponds that there's a problem, and that we may very well be able to help in the firefighting process and then attack all of these. I have a problem of, now that we know that we're addressing this issue, and I know, David, we disagree on these things, that to take this back would be a step back rather than keep maintaining it. I don't think we need any more money every year, whether it's an article or whatever, but I think
Well, that's how you do it with Wandsworth Hand.
yeah.
And you let the town decide if it's
I
important.
mean, that's
Yeah.
where, that's a benefit, I think, you know, that I can see as a benefit. So, but the town could also take a look at this line item and say, no, you know, they can.
Let me ask that same question a different way. Suppose the town decided that we didn't want to support the fire ponds anymore, that we're just not going to do anything with them. What would the fire department's remedy for that be?
Do the best we could with what we've got.
Okay,
But would it
do you
be,
need additional tanker trucks?
well, but the new fire engine is taking a tanker out of service, so do you think about that differently? I mean, there's a lot of.
No, but, you know, I'm not trying to.
Again, I understand what you're
Fire
saying.
truck.
Okay.
What's the remedial
Not-
path?
We do the same thing we've done in the past. If there's a pond that we can draft from, we'll draft from it. If there isn't, you know, where you live, there's no water source.
No, I know that.
Well, yeah, they could.
North Road, right? You
So
can
you
lay a
might
line all
not
the way
want
from
to
North
you might want to keep
to
the water
Pond.
tanker.
No, that's not gonna happen. No, that's not gonna happen.
I would suggest maybe if there's going to be some remediation of these, that it would be near the heavily populated areas, like the school. I think you would have a better chance of some of the townspeople wanting to pass the upkeep near the schools or near buildings where there's a mass amount of people.
It's getting that there's a mass amount of people everywhere. If you were to Google Bolton and look down.
But I mean, like a building, so you've got, you know, a building on
Actually,
fire.
that's one of the primary reasons why Town Hall Fire Pond is our primary,
Yeah.
because of the conservation buildings within the center of town.
If I remember correctly, there was a discussion last year about whether to make the fire pond maintenance an article. And were you consulted on that? And you thought that that might be a way of addressing?
I don't believe she was here.
She wasn't here, but she.
We all talked about that.
Yeah, and I think at the time we thought it was more of a
Time was out.
budget.
We did very well in the years that we totally neglected them. So, you know, I mean, that was really what the thinking was.
I mean,
I always said, little by
One
little,
thing I
let's
did
get
want to
them
bring
done.
up is tonight, if one of the structures in the center of Bolton, which not only has a financial value, but also has an emotional value, were to be in a problem, we would spend a ferocious amount of time accessing the fire pond across the street. It's frozen over. Probably it would take in the vicinity of a half hour to 45 minutes to access it. If we had a dry hydrant, we could probably access it in 5 to 8 minutes. That would be a difference, considerable.
Can you just put dry hydrants in and not do the dredging?
No.
I say in most cases no, because you need the depth of water.
All right, I'll take that back. We're hoping the one on Century Mill to be able, because there's water flowing through it, it keeps the pond clean. We're hoping to be able to just put a dry hydrant in there. That's a rare exception.
Do you have an ice auger?
I'm sorry?
Do you have a gas ice auger?
No, we don't.
You have a chainsaw.
We have a chainsaw, but even, I'm talking using a chainsaw on a cold night like this, accessing. And the other interesting thing is chainsaw, when it hits the water, stops working. It won't cut anymore. So it's not something we would really want to have to do.
No, I mean, but I see David's point. It's David, it's like, I mean, I see your point. It's just, I don't know, we live in a town that doesn't have any water, and you want to protect life and property, and so this was a methodical
And I
approach
would-
to 20,000 a year to, and to Terry's point, it's gonna take us 10 years, but it's better than what we were doing, and 20,000 incrementally.
I take
is, you know,
big steps to protect life,
Yeah,
but property, most of which is probably insured, you know, I do everything I could to that, but to be spending 20,000 a year on something that you may use once a year and probably not even that much, you know, it doesn't make sense to me, but you know, it's a judgment someone makes. I don't think you can mathematically work it out.
but it's a terrible message to send to your taxpayers, though, I think, which is why I actually like the idea of putting the article out there, 200 grand, or and maybe putting one of these out every year with a $20,000 article and letting the town debate whether they
Well, I
want to
think
spend money for it.
that's what the question had been last year, was just to have this, you know, so that you'd have an article, maybe it wouldn't be 20, let's say it's
40
20
or
or 30 or something, and so that if you don't use it, it rolls forward to another article, right? Isn't that how it would work? I mean, you could use it then for a subsequent article, and so you wouldn't every year be dealing with this.
So let's say we put there's an article, 200,000, you get them all done. How many can you actually do in a year? All of them? Half of them?
Between the permitting, the planning, you certainly wouldn't be able to get them all done in 1 year.
How many do you think? Maybe half?
Okay, so you say you were going to give us 200,000?
Yeah, which would do a
Let's
month.
say the town voted.
Okay, so I'd like to think 10 at $20,000 a piece, and maybe you could. Maybe you could do 12, maybe you could do 8.
No, in a year.
I mean,
With
not with the
200,000?
money, just time-wise.
Time-wise, you kind of run into a problem there, because you like to do them when it's dry, when the water level is low as can be.
Right, so you're only gonna do 2, maybe 3 a year.
100 of it that we could be using for something else.
You're correct. So,
Just where the budgeting kind of
Well,
works.
that's my article.
I just don't see that the fire hall decision is a big enough, important enough topic to put before the town.
Well, I just use it as an alternative to, hey, So Dave's got his opinion, we have ours. What does the town think?
No, that's
Yeah.
fine, but
I don't know.
Well,
I don't see...
folks call in.
Yeah. The one or two people.
Is any of it operational in that if none of the fire holes worked whatsoever, you have to fill your tankers somehow, somewhere? Could you use non-fire hole water in town? Do we have any of that?
Non-fire hole.
Like, meaning if none of
We have
these
3 that are
worked.
working.
Oh, that's right, those
You
three,
could fill down.
so those three, you would tap
Okay.
those to fill your,
Where do you live?
Somewhere.
right,
Excuse me, where do you live?
Still River.
Still River. Okay, so you want us to come to the center of Bolton to fill our tank and then come back to Still River to...
No, I'm just trying to get an
Okay,
idea of like,
okay.
what if, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we'd find the water someplace.
Let's, so I guess we've got 2 options here, well, 3. Don't do anything. Keep the 20,000 in and move forward this year with with their recommendations of what they want to do, which is Town Hall Fire Pond and the Century Mill Road Brook Pond, or some amount into an article at town meeting. And I just go around and get everybody's opinion. Brad?
I'll stick with the process that's presently going on.
Town meeting.
Town meeting?
Process at town meeting.
Okay. An amount?
But, well, that's the part that bothers me, because I hate to see $200,000 tied up and you only can use.
No, but then don't do it. Then do it 30,000 and just roll them over year after year after year.
Well, that's what I mean.
Well, I'd keep the slow and steady approach. 20 grand to me is, either you're gonna do 2, there's only 20 to do, we'll get there.
Yep, okay.
Keep with the, I like the process as it is.
Julie?
I don't live in Bolton, I have a fire hydrant across the street.
So we should go to your place.
I live in Bolton, so I would like to see the plan go forward.
Which, this plan
Yeah,
is
yeah.
this. Okay, I think that's the consensus, and we'll do that. We'll keep the 20,000 in, and if anybody has any questions, they can, talk about it at town meeting. Anyway,
I'm gonna, this is not a promise, but it's a hope. We're gonna get one maybe for free.
pardon me?
Yeah.
We're working on it.
Okay. I just had a quick question about
And something
it.
I do want to state that there have been other cases where when developments have gone to town, that we've had the developer do some of this work for us. A good example is the dry hydrant that went in on Sugar Road in Golden Run. That was done by the Bolton Road developer. So we certainly would take advantage of opportunities like that also.
And I know there was, I think on the list last year, because I was watching the meeting, there was the fire pond for Saltbox, and that's not on this list, so I assume that's being taken care of by the new...
Actually, that is the town hall.
Oh, that's the town hall.
And the large, extensive redevelopment of the salt box, that's not going to happen, so that's why we want to
Oh, okay.
get that done now.
So, okay.
Now, tell me something, David. If you were a developer moving into town, and you knew the town wasn't doing anything on fire ponds, but we told you had to build a cistern, what would you say?
It would depend on how much money I thought I could make on the development. If it was profitable with the cistern, I'd do it.
Right?
If it was not, if I couldn't make a decent return with it, I wouldn't. A pure economic decision, I think, there. For us, it's
Again, for you.
a judgmental decision, not an economic one.
Well, it is economics. So.
Yeah, just make sure it helps. We have, I know you sent out 2 other pieces of information having to do with the fire apparatus and proposed rescue purchases. I'm just wondering, it's so late already, it's 10 o'clock. What's the feeling of the committee to have any discussion on this, or come back when we have, on the 18th? when we
I think I
have-
know as much as I need to know of.
I'd rather...
You know everything you need to know about this stuff?
Well, the fire,
Yeah.
the fire truck.
No, the fire truck,
The new
yeah.
stuff, no, I don't have any questions on it, to be honest. I think
Okay.
capital planning is gonna go through it, and we'll
Yeah.
talk
Yeah, I
about
think I'd rather have one discussion about it than
I think so.
several discussions.
So I think we'll just keep this information, invite you back, if you want to come on the 18th when the capital planning is going to be here. When are you speaking to them?
Next month.
Okay, Monday's the day, huh? Okay. Any other,
We did have one other
Sure.
line item that we...
I didn't, I'm sorry. Got so excited about fire.
The 5850,
Yes, equipment.
right, which is level funded 3,500. The primary purpose of this is to replace the equipment primarily the fire hose on a 15-year replacement cycle. So every year we buy some amount of fire hose of different sizes that we use, such that come 15 years, it's all being replaced.
Okay, no expenditures yet, but I'm sure you're gonna spend it.
We will.
Any other questions for fire? Thank you for staying, thank you for
Thank you.
coming. We'll see.
John, do you have an extra copy of the statistics you have?
I believe I do. Well, actually, it's much just,
Hello.
How you doing?
thank you very much.
Thank you.
You may
always
have stuff.
appreciate you coming in. This is really informative stuff. So,
That's a great job.
yeah. Yeah, nice job.
Are you expecting us to vote on capital project items tonight?
I doubt it, because we'll be getting all that information. I mean, I don't see, I
Thank you.
don't know what the process has been before, but it seems like some of it will
Well,
be,
we do that at the very end.
yeah.
Right.
I mean, new.
I would appreciate that.
But do we usually invite the different departments in at the same time we vote on capital plan?
I did the math, and
I don't know, they're just coming as audience
this
members.
year is 50 years on the fire
So that they can defend a decision that they may not like.
Maybe.
Good enough.
It's a public meeting.
No, I
mean,
understand that, but I think in the past, we've had people come in for budgets, and then after we've met with capital planning, we've asked them.
Ask them to come back?
We've done one night of just capital
Yeah.
planning items, and then we vote separately.
Okay, I'll take a look at the
And I think,
agenda and see,
there's
too much going on.
There's too much going on if capital planning is trying to explain their position to us, and someone else is going to be arguing against it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And what we're all supposed to do is, as we pass out these budget sheets, we're all supposed to have in mind, the amount of money there is to allocate, and
Yep.
and we're supposed to all, in our own course, get comfortable or discomfortable with, uncomfortable with the capital requests. And then at the end of the process, we go around and we individually prioritize on our own, and then we see what consensus is, right? So I think that worked well last year, I thought, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
so at a later time,
Yeah.
okay. And doesn't it come up when we're going through the articles, or it comes up as a separate meeting before that?
Separate meeting on, well, the articles are really what the selectmen actually listen to, whatever we decide, sort of shapes how the articles go.
So then it needs to be in, oh, well, I guess so.
Right, because if we decide to do the fire holes on our own, or we say, hey, we think if we have a consensus that it should be an article, then it's an article.
Yeah,
And the selectmen sponsor it. They usually listen to sort of how we want to fund things. Well, in order to write an article, it needs to have a funding source. And in order to have a funding source, we need to have a consensus on, number one, whether we support it, and number two, if we support it, how we consensus decide how to pay for it.
okay.
So all that, I think, comes
See what we can,
sequentially.
yeah, okay.
And then when we vote on the articles, it's a slam dunk, because
Because
we've
we've had
already
all that.
formulated the articles
Yeah.
in which we supported, right?
Yeah.
Or the ones that we decided to put on, even though we didn't support it, that we thought the town deserved a decision, and we vote to not support it. But that's happened before too.
Right, okay, so let me look through that, and I'll make sure that gets done. I have a lot of things, and so it's already 10 o'clock, so I don't want to see what we want to go through. Just, number one, we have scheduled an additional meeting for February 18th. I understand that we have a quorum.
I will be here.
No, you will be here.
I will
We have more than a quorum. Okay. So, that was, well.
So dry to read.
Everybody's
I don't know,
asleep.
yeah.
Everybody's asleep, that's right.
That's right.
But
Okay, so-
given that situation and the fact that more of this capital stuff is going to be
Later.
later.
Yeah, you're
If I
fine.
could just give you guys a quick overview of, just real quickly from my perspective on this, how it is in the fire. Because
The equipment?
I asked.
Brad is liaison with the fire department and the ambulance.
So the chief asked me to hook up with him. So a couple Saturdays ago, I met with him, and he was, going through this with me. So one, I asked him to put photos with all this stuff, but just very quickly, the airbags and stabilization struts, we don't have any of those in existence. And the cribbing, which they have 4x4 wooden blocks. So the proposal for these new ones, they interlock so they don't move. So anyone who's put a 4x4 on top, it could slide out, and the whole idea is to keep something from collapsing on a firefighter. And these things can get hosed off too. And then just on the jaws of life, 15 years old, the town lost the cutters a couple weeks ago. So we presently are using a loaner set from an outside. Lost them in the sense that they're broken and the beyond repair. So the manufacturer has loaned.
Drop out of my pocket somewhere.
So the manufacturer has loaned the town cutters, but they are the same technology that we had previously, which the chief is saying that the metals on these new cars, they're just not working. And the manufacturer can call in the marker at any point saying we need them back. So just a couple things on that as some background color that I learned.
Are
on
any
this
of these things owned by the fire department?
Yeah, this picture right here is the present set of the Bolton Fire Department. But the idea of a new one is, the present set requires a couple of firefighters because they need to carry the stuff too. And the idea of a new one would be battery operated, so that more portable. And then, and just the ability to, technology-wise, keep up with the times on ripping apart these cars. That what the whole point of this tool is for. So, my thought, the way I was talking to the chief and presenting this was, there might be even just an immediate need to address the fact that the town lost, the use of a pair of cutters as a piece of this equipment. And I recognize the whole call volume and all that, so.
But it doesn't say, even though it's a call volume of accidents, how many times these things have been used.
Well, exactly, but I mean, that's obviously a good starting point since these are designed to, pry apart and cut cars.
Okay, so I think that's good. Thank you, Brad, and I think we can look at that, and we'll certainly have input from capital planning, and we'll be able to address it.
What's interesting though on that, not to belabor it, is I think it's a capital item because the aggregate sum of 6 of these things is a capital item, but when you look at them individually, it's not, and so how do you weigh, then is there pork barrel?
But it's like you did.
I'm not suggesting that, but.
Well, but it's the same thing that we did with the
breathing apparatus.
The breathing out, and even the software, the 20,000, and then you added the two together, it was 52,000, so that made it seem to be
There's been a
worthwhile.
lot of investment in the fire department in the past 2 or 3 years.
And maybe rightly so. I mean, well, that's always a question.
True, but also, Bob, look at this. I mean, we don't presently have, things
I'm not disputing the
we're on
use of it.
495.
I'm just saying that given the other stuff that we've, got to look at this year.
Completely agree. I was just truly shocked that this would be a new item to the department. It's just kind of...
And is all of this is linked to save human life?
Yeah,
and also just to protect the present firefighter. I mean, if they need to stabilize a vehicle to get to the person, if all of a sudden it falls onto the ambulance crew and the firefighters. So yeah, I agree. I mean, they're getting a lot of attention. They've gotten a lot of money, but I think it's also just addressing the lack of years past. So I'm not
Don't disagree.
So just adding my 2 cents from having spent a Saturday morning with the chief, and the upcoming meeting,
so. Any other comments on that? Okay, we won't go through minutes tonight. Just an update on the prior, there were some questions from prior meetings. I just thought I would bring up, there was a question about the library book calculation, and Julie calculated it on the total budget, and that's the number that comes up. She did it correctly, right? But, yeah, so she used the same formula that's been done. So there was just a question of...
So,
Did you get back to the library people with some numbers?
No.
but, okay, I'll have to think about the math, but I
It's
mean...
an
for-
algebraic equation that I am
It's-
not gonna get into at a 10-10 right now. But if you take their total budget and you multiply it by 17.5%, you're gonna get the number I get for the books. Do that, and if you don't, come back to me.
I think she also needs to get that information back to the library committee so they can examine it and validate it themselves.
But when I was complaining, or not complaining, I was just asking about the delta, that we
Well,
decreased
yeah.
$5,000, and then I saw disproportionate decrease. And so what I think you're hearing, or what you're saying is maybe the formula wasn't even calculated right in the first place. Because there's no way a $5,000 decrease would have resulted in the book change.
Right.
But I think what happened was, we asked Julie to recalc it. I bet you there was formulaic errors prior to our change, but.
I never checked their prior formula.
Yeah, all right, so we just asked the question because it just didn't look right, and that's fine.
Okay. We had talked about, what had been brought up at the last meeting, that I think it was with Cynthia's wages, that she had included there was an extra 2 days, and she was one of the few wages where we saw actually a change from 2014, because we haven't applied any COLA, and we asked her about it, and she said it was a couple of extra days in the year. I asked Julie about it. She is assuring us that she will do the wage calculations when it becomes the appropriate time to do it, and they will be accurate. Correct?
Yes.
And there are very few people that fall into the Cynthia calculation. It's a very unique situation.
The only thing I'd ask on that is that we not wait too long to do it.
Well, I need a COLA so that I can go through it all at one time.
Yeah, see, I'd argue that we do it. I'd argue that regardless of that there's time, that we should do it before too. I mean,
Who
we
said there's
can't.
time?
Well, so I'm not arguing that point, but what we run into is, if we wait long enough to do this, as we're scorekeeping money and stuff, then at the end of this happened a few years ago where it wasn't checked until the end, and we found out that the budget was like $30,000, and then we had to go back and reallocate stuff in a tight budget. Now, I'm not saying that we have that problem now, since we have a little bit more money, but...
What's the prognosis for getting a COLA?
I have not heard anything.
Okay, so that's...
So, no, I've asked the question. There's, nothing is available right now, and we're using 2%.
If he can't make a commitment, then all the other numbers have to be right.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And
We're
I'm
using
sorry,
2%.
there's not that many employees in the town
Yeah.
where I think it's a day's worth of work. I'm not putting the words in anybody's mouth, but I can't see the amount of work to do this to validate the
We
number.
can't sit here and tell Julie what to do, but
Yeah.
I think the argument to Dawn is, if you can't give us a number, then we just need to know that the numbers that we do have are the right ones.
Right.
The numbers that we do have
In the
Now-
budget, sitting here today.
with respect to
All
wages.
the wage lines.
Nothing's been done on the wage lines.
But some people have calculated their steps.
No, there's difference in these wage lines.
There's step increases, but there's no
But the step
COLAs.
You don't know that the
Increases are-
step increases are correct.
Yeah, the departments do it, and they've done it wrong many times before.
So you want, but which, well, it's a,
It's a Dawn question.
It's a Dawn
Unfortunately,
question.
It's a Dawn question.
and the question is that short, I don't really understand the question. So the question is that,
The question is-
without
You wanna
regard,
make
let me
me
just
go
state it and see.
verify all the wages,
And
and then
without
later go
regard-
and add a COLA to it all.
Yeah, so without regard to
Correct.
COLA, that these numbers are correct.
That's right.
Yes.
And I'll go on the record to say that I'm sorry, I just don't see that that's a lot to ask for a relatively small employee population.
That and coming to meetings that last 3
This
hours
is not-
outside of my schedule
this is not-
is a lot to
not-
ask.
So pick
Get
one.
on, well, maybe you need to get on, Don, and say that we're asking you to do something that is out of your purview or whatever, or comfort zone, and, you know,
Job description?
a
maybe?
job description, and get on the stick. You don't want to do it twice. You shouldn't have to do it twice,
We
really.
don't have a COLA number, Bill. The negotiation.
If we don't get a COLA
We're gonna
number.
get-
We're not gonna have negotiations before the warrant.
That's
Well, no,
why
I know,
it
but
needs
he's
to be
got to
done.
come up with a number by then.
That's
No,
fine. He can choose to put a warrant article in there to cover the COLA amount,
Right.
where he just says a sum of money, and then he presents the number at the town floor. I don't care about that. But if he's not gonna give us the COLA number, then we should have assurance that all the other numbers are correct. And this, to me, this is not an issue between this committee and Julie, it's an issue between
Right.
us and her manager.
Right.
Fine, I'll talk to him about it. I'll see if we can, see what's involved with that and what his thoughts are about getting a COLA number.
And Julie, maybe if he does hear it from you, it might help.
So when we were talking to the Housing Authority, there was a question about the fact that there's now a housing consortium that does a lot of what he used to do, and the cost for that was, we weren't certain, but it turns out it was $10,000 in the first year, thought to be potentially what it might cost to be part of this housing consortium. It is going to be paid out of the Affordable Housing Trust. No money has been spent yet.
Who authorizes that spending?
It comes from
That the selectmen?
There's an Affordable Housing Trust Committee.
Yes, that's right.
And it consists of the selectmen and the Housing Authority together, I think, so.
Yes.
And then it's somebody else too, I think,
Dennis
yeah.
Story was on it too.
Yeah, planning, it's a kind of
Okay. All right.
a, in fact, you can
So
probably.
it doesn't have to go to town meeting?
Right. Yeah, that trust can vote, that committee can vote to pay it from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Okay, school committee will be meeting February 1st, this Saturday, from 8:30, it's scheduled to end at 1 o'clock at Emerson School Committee Room. We're all invited, of course, to attend.
Are we posted?
I will make sure we are, that's a good point, thank you. We did send off the list of questions that we were going to have to discuss with them when they come in, I think, whatever day it is, the 11th. No, it can't be the 11th. Yeah, it could be the 11th. And the last...
There was some notice that there is a school committee meeting that night.
There's a school committee meeting Tuesday. Tonight.
No, I think it was the same night that we invited them in. Did you get an email about that?
Then they've been changed.
Yeah, because, that's right.
Because there was something I saw that Nancy was asking if she could come later in the meeting.
Oh, time-wise.
Yes.
But I'll get these out to you. But, so they're at 7 to 7:30. Let me just check on that again.
Yeah, somewhere I saw that there's a conflict there.
That was an email, right?
Is that Space Needs meeting tonight?
No, it's 22nd.
No, that was the 22nd.
That was the
last week.
Anything to report on that?
Sure, briefly, we had some more discussion about what the goals are. I don't really know how important this is because it came up in passing, but I was surprised to hear it. Is that part of the administration's concern is our ability to market the Neshoba schools compared to other schools. And in terms of the other schools offer more electives. And by electives, I mean stuff out of the core curriculum of math, science, and reading and writing. And that there have been a number of parents who have taken their children out of the Bolton High School, out of the Bolton school system to attend, I shouldn't say Bolton. From the 3 towns, there are people who have chosen to take their children out of the district because their children are interested in pursuing certain areas of study that are not offered here. This is not vocational training kind of stuff. This is not a Minuteman versus Aspect kind of. It's theater, some other form of arts, perhaps languages or something like that. A variety of areas outside of that. So as we go through this space thing, our marketability of the Neshoba Regional School District came up, and that was sort of news to me. What else was there?
Does that start to address Stan's questions about, whether if our school district is not of the higher caliber, that affects people moving into town, might affect our property values?
Not directly, but the other thing that came out is that people come to the school district and basically when people are looking to move to this part of the state, they don't know where to live and they make their choice based on the school district. So they interview basically the people at the high school or even up at the district office to find out what school system they want to bring their kids to. The places we get compared to are Acton, Boxborough, Concord, Carlisle, Lincoln, Sudbury, and Algonquin.
Where's Algonquin?
It's Northborough, Southborough. Okay. It's a regional school.
High school.
I think that was in Harvard, would be the other school. Those are the other school systems that we get compared to according to the administration. And that was the first time I'd heard that comparison, that list of schools in a semi-official tone. So that was illuminating to see where we stand against those communities and against those schools. So we're meeting again next month. I don't remember the exact date, and we're going to start talking about a detailed process for getting to where we want to go.
Okay. Good. I think there's other topics here, we'll just put them off till next week, but I don't know, let me hand you out where we are kind of on this spreadsheet thing.
Thank you.
What I did do is include here the, I also wanted to hand you out what came from.
Wow.
From the assessors about the reduction in tax rate if we were to give back money. Do you want this, David? No, this is an additional.
Yes.
Okay. So you see I included the, I mean, there are numbers missing still. We don't have certain numbers.
You have the town-involved engineering study here, but I thought I saw an article.
Well, it was 413, but that's going to be removed.
Okay.
And this is what they're going to, they're coming, I think, they're coming on the, I don't know, 18th, 18th, I guess. They're proposing that they do a study first, and maybe to some folks, Brad's raised this concern, maybe hopefully part of that study will be, are there ways of not having to build a vault? I mean, I know it's required by law, but everything's digitized now.
There's no place to put it.
in that too. So that's why that's reduced from 413 to 30. The other change would be the library, the cameras. I had library cameras that should be changed. The cameras now include the town hall for 6656, or range, I use 7200, and the library interior and exterior for 10,370. Nothing for the DPW. I had understood the DPW doesn't want a camera. I don't know whether, I think the question would be to then is whether they want it or not. It's a town building. Do we think if the other, if the other locations need a camera, why wouldn't DPW? In a discussion I had, the reason that you've got both the cruiser here and in the budget is that Chief didn't know where we wanted to put it, so he put it in both places. Because I guess there had been some discussion last year about maybe doing a cruiser every 2 out of 3 years, and so he just he's sort of covering all bases by putting him here.
Stay in the budget.
Hmm?
I thought we.
Well, we did, but what I'm saying is that, we can't have it both places.
No, it'll come.
Right now it's in both places.
Right now it's in both places. So the only other thing is that you'll notice at the top, the very top part of return of excess funds to the taxpayer. If we were to return $500,000 to taxpayers using the calculation that Cynthia gave, it would reduce the bill about $235 on an average tax bill. But if you do that, you can see we fall short by, you couldn't do the fire apparatus, so.
We're not going to do all of it anyway.
You got to do one or the other.
Yeah.
Right, so that just, so we're 500,000, but that.
But that assumes that every one of these things absolutely has to be done.
Right, we don't know that.
Okay, so-
We don't know that. That's absolutely right. But that's just, with everything in here, I don't have a figure for the union contract. I asked Julie if she can help maybe figure out what that might be using a 2%, just that number. But I'll follow up with that too.
Just can I ask to finish up my ambulance project, Julie, could you send me the December 13 ambulance receipts, please? And then also, if I need all the money, or if we need all the money at the end of April, how soon, if town meeting's May 6th, how soon do we know what the April receipts are after April closes? Do we know them all through the month, or do we have to wait like 2 weeks after the month? So should I try to cut off at March? I mean, I just don't know what the timing is.
Well, I technically don't get them from Donna till at least the next month, but there may be a way to find out just what the ambulance is.
Yeah, I mean, it's 11 grand. Maybe I'll just, to be conservative, try to freeze this thing at March, so we definitely know in April prior to the meeting on May 6th. You know what I mean? I'll do it a couple different ways, but I think the only other number I don't have is the December one. And then Terry, we're gonna have to take off.
Yeah,
Up here, we're gonna have to take something off,
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, for the as soon as we
We're gonna
figure
have
out.
less revenue and
Right.
some.
We still have to go over, and I guess we'll have to do this next meeting, the excise tax.
Let me just ask a question about that.
Mhm.
This is the time of the month where we get the major commitment from the state. If that comes in, could you bring it to the meeting next week? Okay, thank you.
There had been also some discussion about the historical commission. There's a couple of things. First of all, you'll see that I'm just going to go back. The veterans agent has submitted another budget with $14,500. I just don't know whether that figure. I think it's an amount that is hard to substantiate what the benefits are going to be. That was an increase from $11,000 to $14,500. I think we had left it that we wanted him to discuss that with Julie, and I don't know whether there was any conversation that he didn't. So we can get back to him to see if we can to make sure that that number makes any sense. Now, Julie did send me a note that there was a big portion of the veterans benefits that were expended once, 40%. So if that's never going to occur again, the 11,000 may be a good number. So I think we need to still evaluate that.
Concept of run rate was lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we think we still have to follow through with him. On the Historical Commission, there have been some concern that maybe people are, the money is being spent on something that may not be necessarily the direction that we want the commission to go, or expenditures that haven't necessarily been, terminology.
It's the most perfect example is they're creating a historic district by doing this PAN study. And the town spoke very clearly on the protections that were lost to homeowners, or the liberty that was lost if your home faced a historic, it was in a historic district. You can't put your old windows in and all that stuff, right? They're essentially, in my opinion, and maybe some others, I think they're using public money to sort of
create
historic districts. And we don't know if the people that they're moving to really want that. Without thinking about it differently.
Yeah, it's not the same kind of historic district.
No, I understand. It's
Okay, but
it's a survey.
I'm still not sure that this deserves public funds. I'm not sure the town really wants this.
What does it mean to a homeowner in this new survey if their home is tagged to be historic?
Or you know, what,
do they want that? Does it hurt them?
Yeah, and I think the problem is that there was the Pan project, which came out of the Pan Cemetery, and I think that that's kind of defined, and maybe these other cemeteries, but I also have the feeling that there was sort of like, we're going to create historic districts wherever we can create them. Anyway, we raised that question, and it's my understanding that they've been asked, or will be asked, to attend a select board meeting to discuss where they're going.
I don't think we asked enough questions on the ramifications to the town.
Yeah. Right. Well,
you know,
and I think some of that's been spent already, unfortunately. It's not.
The center of town's in the listing of historical something or others.
Yep, already, yep.
But there's no benefit to the town that I can discern from that, so I don't know why we'd want to spend money to recreate that elsewhere in town.
So this is, I think it's good that we're questioning this, it's a $5,000 item, and, where the money is being spent, and I think it's also correct that the selectmen are going to take a look at it.
Okay.
So that's where we're at right now with them. And the only other thing is I had raised an issue about the library painting, and whether that had been an article, the very first go-round of articles, and now it's, I think the expenditure, the funds for that is going to come out of the original article.
Building funds.
Yeah, building, that we built it because the repairs that have to be made are related to building not being done, substandard building. So that makes sense, and you've gone through that too, Julie, and so that's, everybody concurs with that. So it's not here, it's not going to show up, it's going to be taken out of when you see other available funds, and Julie had a line, we have an amount there, I think it's $80-some thousand, and she had available question mark, it's going to be used for the $20,000 or $22,000 for that. So that's all I have, besides some stuff that we'll just roll over to next week.
Okay. I move we adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
You're going to take a vote?
Oh, everybody vote, please. Aye.
Aye.